Yeah. Uh, uh, this is Ravindra Deshpande. I'm an architect and a valuer. So I believe we have some majority of the participants here. They are civil engineers and valuers. Uh, Besides civil engineers, I understand that there are a few architects who are practicing architects who are practicing as valuers also. So I would say that the architects, they generally have a better exposure to the working of the municipal authorities, the bylaws, and its effect on the value of the property. So uh, we'll begin with the basics of valuation. uh, so value as such is economic concept. It's an estimate of what the price should be. See, earlier in the olden days, you had the system of barter, wherein maybe the grains could be exchanged for a grain, or grains could be exchanged for goods. Subsequently, we had the concept of the money came in. So we have the money as a medium of exchange. So for a particular asset, whatever can be the whatever the price ought to be, that is what we say is the value of the proper value of that asset. It could be movable asset, it could be immovable asset. Now, being real estate valuers, we are required to state more about the real estate, that is the land and building or different types of buildings. You may have the residential, commercial, or uh, industrial projects. So there are times, value happens to be a function of the demand and supply. uh, Maybe at times, uh, we hear that or we experience that the value of the cost or the price of a commodity keeps fluctuating. Agar समझिए, you have the onion. The governments also are bothered about the cost of commodities. There are times when you may get a particular commodity, maybe agricultural commodity, at, let's say, 3 rupees a kilo, or at times it could be 30 rupees a kilo or 100 rupees a kilo also. So though it is expected to be a function of the cost of production, that is the efforts taken by a person to produce it. Let's say the farmer, he would be toiling in the farms. Whatever would be the input cost, similarly for be the cost of the land plus cost of obtaining approvals, give an indication as to what would be the amount that is being spent by the producer of the. It could be the indication as to what could be the expectation of the seller based on we have the other principles also. We have the economical principles. This same, I'll give you an example. Hiranandani developers, they are well-known developers. In Kharghar, they had a project wherein initially say 2,200 sometime always true that the production could be governing. If you have any queries or anything to ask, please you can ask me. So cost is what the seller or the originator incurs to acquire or to create the object, and it's a fact. Like you can add up whatever are the expenses that are incurred for a production of a particular commodity, and the price. If you go to a shop, you have the printed price on the various goods. So that is what the buyer pays. So there is a difference between the cost and the price. The price, it's a function of the financial capability or motivation or the interest of the party. The value is what the buyer gets. So the value can vary from person to person. Maybe if you may have seen that you have auction process or you have some biddings done, wherein it's not always that the same price, the same amount is uh, quoted by everybody, because it's the function of the utility that a person would perceive. So value is what the buyer gets by way of benefits through the acquisition. So it would be either to generate the surplus or to satisfy the needs. And from the market standpoint, once assigned monetary estimates, it is the most likely price of that particular object or the asset. So act of valuation is the assessment of monetary value of a product or an asset without taking it through the actual market. So when we are doing valuation, we are not actually selling it, but we are trying to based on whatever the information that we get about the particular property or an asset, we compare it with the other similar properties. There could be some advantages, disadvantages. There could be some issues with the property that for which we may have some sale instance, or there could be issues with the property under reference. So these things need to be considered while valuing the property. So while conducting the high value tangible assets like land and buildings, principles of engineering, economics, and law, all these are applied. Now, since all of us are with a technical background, so engineering aspects, everybody knows what can be the, let's say we have an RCC structure vis-a-vis the load bearing structure. Then it could be maybe an ancient structure. So depending upon what kind of techniques are that are adopted in creating of an the building, they would govern the the value of the property. Now here we have some of the and it also depends upon the overall economical conditions of the particular area, the country, globally. It's macroeconomic and microeconomic. So if the economy is not really doing well, there could be a possibility that there can be compromises in the uh, engineering product, or the maybe the grade of concrete, or the grade of concrete, or the supervision, the workmanship, the materials that are being used for the basic structure and the finishing works. They could be compromised depending upon the economics. Whereas if the market is good, that's the economy is good, and people can afford to pay well for the particular asset, then people would tend to go for premium use of premium products. So engineering and economics, these are interrelated, uh, and various laws, they are applicable. Now, I would like to tell you that it could be rules, regulations, or the guidelines by various authorities. Here in Mumbai, Just 2 days back, there was a news that for self redevelopment, the RBI is imposing some restrictions for the cooperative banks to fund these self redevelopment projects. I hope I am able to, you are able to understand. Redevelopment projects are wherein you have people staying in. It could be a tenanted property, it could be partially owned and partially tenanted property, or uh, it could be a society which is an old society, maybe 30, 35, 40 years old society. Structure may have become dilapidated, then people can take up the redevelopment work, and there is an incentive FSI. Now, generally the builders, they are equipped and they are capable of handling such kind of projects where you have a lot of issues. But the some time back, if till let's say uh, 3 4 years back, they had been promoting self redevelopment, meaning a builder doesn't come into picture, but the the owners or the occupants themselves, they come forward. They are being given the finances by the district cooperative banks, and you can they can take up the development themselves, so the developers profit margins are uh, enjoyed by the uh, occupants and the members of the society or the proposed society. Now if there is a restriction put by the RBI, then they would not be in a position to take up the self redevelopment. It is being treated as a commercial entity. So if there is any kind of anything of this kind, or uh, uh, we have the Lavasa, I hope people may have heard about it. So Lavasa is it had been projected as the first hill station being developed in independent India. It is between Mumbai and Pune, spread over an area of about 8,000 acres. And the project got stuck up because of the environmental clearances. They had some, made some representations. However, the project got delayed. It got derailed. So the laws, they have to be followed. Whatever development that comes way has to be followed, and in a way that the project doesn't halt, or it doesn't stop in between. Maybe a lot of projects you may have seen around you, that they are started and for some reason the project gets stopped. So moving to the next, the same value is value notions in valuation. So when we talk about valuations, is the financial worth of the object that we have talked about. Then the positive attributes of the object. Let's say here in Mumbai, generally the properties that are facing the sea, which have a good view, unobstructed view, they command a premium. You have here in Worli area or Malabar Hill area, irrespective of whatever could be the market conditions, the flats could be sold at, let's say, 1 lakh rupees per square foot. That's basically because it is considered to be the a prime property. So the positive attributes of the property or the object, they have to be taken into consideration, and significance of the property. Then it's not we are not talking about anything abstract. It is whatever you can see or whatever you can feel. Whereas and these concepts also at the some at times these concepts also can vary. uh, Maybe in Maharashtra or Gujarat, or towards the north, a plot which is located at the T junction commands a premium, because it is expected to have a better commercial potential. Whereas down south, people have exactly opposite belief. No, so The beliefs at times they do play a role. Now, valuation, whether it is science or an art, so similar to what we have in architecture, you have a part of it is science and a part of it is art. Like unlike engineering is more of a science. It is fact based. It is related to the facts, figures, formulae. Whereas valuation, to an extent, it is science, and to an extent, it is art. Whatever is the analytical part is science, and whatever is the derivative part is an art. So when you whatever is the science part of it, it doesn't generally change. Like when you visit a property, the orientation of the property, whatever are the surroundings of the property, the road, the adjoining plots or the heights of the adjoining plots, the open spaces. So these things do not change. So if you were to compare with the uh, this property, if we are valuing a property, let's say which is having say 20 floors or 25 floors, it has got 2 or 3 lifts, it has got good open space, it has got other amenities, and if you have similar property which again has maybe 2 3 floors here and there, doesn't matter, but it can be compared with a property which could be just 3 or 4 storied building with lesser of open spaces. So whatever is the comparative or the analytical part is science, whereas subsequently based on whatever is the uh, how do you arrive at a particular value, that is the art of a person, the art, so it's both science and art. So value would depend upon the scarcity. It would depend upon the transferability, demand, and utility. Now, I am tempted to quote one of my college professors. He was a professor of Mr. Gharpure. He was teaching in Ferguson College, Pune, and he used to teach us building economics. Now, I hope everybody is with me. See, generally, if you see the film industry, you have a lot of some of the heroes like Amitabh Bachchan, then you have Nana Patekar, you have Akshay Kumar, and against that you have the heroines also. Now, if you see the heroes, there has been a scarcity of good, men who could pose as heroes or who could be acceptable by the audience as heroes. So we have people like Amitabh Bachchan who have been there for decades, and whereas if you see the heroines, they have been going and coming. So it's that is what actually decides what could be the remuneration that they could be getting. It's not more of domination by the males, but the scarcity and demand and supply, that is what governs the prices. So I hope you would very well understand about the scarcity, demand, and supply. So if there is more demand but the supply is restricted, then in that case the prices would tend to go up. Whereas in the current scenario, when the affordability has gone down, when the affordability has gone down, the disposable incomes have gone down, then the demand would reduce. So since there is a lesser of demand, but the inventory would be there, so the prices would tend to fall down. Now here in Maharashtra, in current scenario, the government of Maharashtra, they have reduced the stamp duty from 5% to 2% and 3%. Uh, and also builders are ready to absorb the stamp duty, meaning the stamp duty generally had been paid by the buyers, whereas now the builders are offering that they are willing to they would be paying the stamp duty for registration of the documents. In spite of that, the sales are not really very high because the disposable income has gone down, and there is an increasing in the unemployment also. Now, transferability is yet one more factor. I am giving you an example wherein uh, you have generally we rely on the uh, title search report by the when we are doing it for mortgage purpose, when the valuations are being done for mortgage purpose, we generally rely on the um, title search report prepared by the panel advocate of the lenders. Whereas it is better that we also as valuers take these things into account, for a simple reason that not everything could be captured in the title search report or TSR by the panel advocate. We have done valuation of some properties on the in B1D area, where the property the loan was sanctioned, the loan was disbursed, the customer went on repaying the loan for a few years. Subsequently, because of the overall market scenario, the account turned NPA. They were not able to repay the loans, and uh, we did the valuation of that property for recovery of the loan. Now, what happened was, though we did the valuation of the property for the first time, it was the demand for that property was not really very great, because if the ticket size is more, then the number of buyers also generally tend to reduce. So the first auction, it failed. There was hardly any buyer. The second auction also did not go through, but some people had shown willingness. Subsequently, when we did the valuation of that property for the third time, we came to know that the Mumbai Metropolitan Regional Development Authority, that's MMRDA, they had issued the notification and a direction to the sub-register offices, that's the department where you have the documents registered, to not to register the documents for the properties they had, as per the list that they had given, because it was found that there were gross violations. So transferability could be related to the regulations or compliance with all the uh, uh, rules and regulations. So I have given you an example of, if there is no compliance, then the transferability could be affected. Uh, some time back, we also had some issues. Like you have the project had all the approvals. Commencement certificate was taken. The approvals were obtained. Then subsequently, the builder sold the properties. There had been some resale transactions also in the projects. And one fine morning, the government of Maharashtra Forest Department, they came up with some documents showing that the land on which the property was constructed or the project was developed was a forest land. So as per their records, that project should not have come up, and the government put a ban on uh, transfer of the flats or sale of flats in that. So these are some of the factors. Then there can be some third party interest also in the property. There can be tenants. If there is a tenanted property vis-a-vis freehold property without which is occupied by the seller, then there aren't much of issues in sale of this. Then we give an example of the washing machine.
Voice is breaking,
Somebody,
sir.
you have to uh, take the efforts to remove clothes from the
Voice is not clear.
Okay.
How
Is
about
it
other participants?
better? Hello. Is it better?
Okay. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And
Sir, one submission.
I hope
No, it's
Sir,
not.
one submission is,
Voice is breaking still.
sir, videos can be switched off to get a better bandwidth.
Yeah,
All
video
participants
has
can
already
switch off
been.
the videos.
You mean all the participants? I
Uh-huh.
think that may be
Yeah.
on part of other participants.
Just 1 second.
I think better all my
Hey,
participants
Pushkar.
may close their videos as suggested by somebody.
Was I audible till, or even initially also you had issues in hearing?
No, sir, no.
No, sir, initially they were fine.
Very fine.
Now it's silent.
Now you are now presently
Now
your voice is good.
It's
It's a poor signal from your side, sir. That's why.
video को बंद करो.
video switch off करा sir.
Mayur Shetty sir, I am co-participant. They are requesting to switch off video.
Sir, continue, sir.
Hello. Maybe somebody who is pressed for time could go for a fully automatic washing machine. So similarly, uh, depending upon the regulations, I'll give you an example of how the value additions can be done, or utility and highest and best use, that we will be talking about a little later.
Sir,
One of my clients,
one
yeah,
submission. The transferability
yeah.
have not got clear idea. Can you say one word or any one sentence? What exactly transferability?
See, when we are doing valuation of a property, we write in the assumptions that the property has a marketable title. If the property does not have a marketable title, or if it is not transferable, then in that case, there is no value for the property. Some time back, we had done a valuation of a property on Goa Road, wherein they had lease agreements. So there was one, the owners, they had leased the property to a particular trust, and in the document, the registered document, they had stated that the property is not transferable because they were constructing a school there. Now, the lessee, they constructed the school building. They were running the functions of the school there. But since there was a clause in the agreement that the property is not transferable, then in that case, if it is not transferable, or if it has to revert back only to the lesser, then in that case it does not have any value. Who's going to
Yeah.
buy that?
Yes, understood. Like
Yeah.
some penthouses on top floors not permitted by municipality may not have value. Am I right? Example?
No, see, transferability is more related with the legal part of it, and
Yes,
as
sir.
yeah, even within the valuer community, we have two schools of thoughts.
Yeah,
Okay,
understood,
one,
sir. Thank you.
yeah. So I'll just clarify that. You have two schools of thought. One school of thought says that we are not concerned about the legal aspect of it, and that has to be taken care of by the advocate or the legal consultant of the bank. Whereas what we are valuing actually is not the brick and mortar, is not the engineering part that we are valuing. We are valuing the rights of the person in that particular property, which can be transferred. And we should be reading between the lines. We should be capable of reading between the lines also. So I'm giving you an example of a hotel wherein it was in Goa that we did valuation of that hotel. It was a huge property spread about 65-70 acres, and there was a holding company which had the rights for the land. So they were the owners of that land. They gave the property on lease, the land on lease, to another company which happened to be a sister concern of that company. And in that they had stated that so much would be the lease agreement, so much would be the premium, so much would be the lease per annum. And the project somehow had got delayed, as most of the projects get delayed, and they entered into a supplementary lease agreement. Now in that supplementary lease agreement, they had put one clause wherein they had stated that the property is to be used by the company only for their own personal use. Okay, so that clause was inserted. Second clause that was there in the original agreement was, in case they were to obtain loan from any financial institution for construction of the hotel, they do not need to take any permission or NOC from the lessor. So that was stated in the original lease agreement. Now, if you correlate and if see the things, the clauses, various clauses of these documents that were executed, we had suggested as valuers, we had brought it to the notice of the lenders that there are limitations and there are issues in funding the property as it is. So as a via media, what we had recommended, that the sister concern that had rights for the land, they should also be made the co-borrowers. The funding can't be just done to the company that was running the hotel. Okay, because there happens to be a breach of contract on the, if you read the article, the clauses in the agreement clearly, one of the clauses was it can be used only for personal use. Whereas who's going to use that, so much of a big property for personal use? It was meant to be constructed for a hotel, used for a hotel. So if they are using it for a hotel, and in the subsequent agreement, if you are saying that it is to be used for personal use only, then and the last clause was, if there is any breach of contract, then the property will revert back to the lessor. So if obviously there was a breach of contract, because the property was not being used for personal use, it was being used for hotel purpose. So if by any chance the account turned NPA, there would have been a possibility that the sister concern that had the rights for the land, they would have gone into a litigation, and a recovery process could have been affected. So we had brought it to the notice of the lenders, and I believe they also made the land holding company also as a party to the loan. Yeah. So I hope that transferability is clear to you.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah. See, you should read. How many of you have read Merchant of Venice? You have read Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare? Hello.
Yes, yes, yes.
So in that play, they are. Please read that. I'll not put say much of time on Merchant of Venice. But the bottom line is, the verdict that is given is, you can have your pound of flesh, but not a drop of blood. Okay. Now, if somebody were to cut into somebody other person's body, to cut or take a pound of flesh, definitely there is going to be blood that's going to ooze out. So, but then the verdict was, as per the agreement they had stated, that if the person fails to comply, then the other person can take a pound of flesh. So the authority gives a verdict that you can have your pound of flesh without taking a drop of blood. Now, if you correlate that with our real estate valuations, of what use would be the building if the underlying land, there are issues in the underlying land, or if the underlying land also can't be mortgaged or transferred. So in most of the cases, we have to be really careful about the land. Now, if you see, as engineers and architects and valuers, we definitely come to know there are some areas, some pockets in the cities or towns where a lot of unauthorized construction is happening, and there are some areas where no such unauthorized constructions are there. If you see the land rates, if they are these properties, they are close by, the land rates would not vary much if all the approvals are there. Now, for an unauthorized construction, the approvals are not taken, the due process of law is not followed, and it's the speed of construction also is done. It's constructed very fast, because before the any objection is taken by the authorities, or the authorities take any action, the developers of unauthorized construction, they want the people to move in, so the quality of construction also is compromised. We had here an one collapse of a building, unfortunate incidents where 74 people died here in Mumbai area, because there were no approvals. Now the projects that were next to this, they commanded a premium. It could be in the range of 3,500 or 4,000 rupees, whereas this building where no approvals were there, it was in the range of 1,500, 1,700. So that's the variation that you have because of non-compliance. And utility, we talked about the washing machine, or we talked about, I give you another uh, uh, example. Generally, people tend to, if you see about the industrial properties or the commercial properties, or in the adjoining properties, uh, uh, the buyers of the adjoining properties, they have to shell out more money, because it's more lucrative for them. They can expand at the same place. So utility, uh, uh, better the higher the utility, the better the price. Marketability, additional value determinant, it's ease of sellability of an asset. Higher the marketability, probability of value going up is larger. If the marketable assets, if suffer constraints, undergo value erosion also. I had told you short while ago about the auction process, wherein for the third time when the auction process was initiated, it could not be concluded at all, because though there was a buyer at a lower price, there were restriction put by the MMRDA, that's Mumbai Metropolitan Regional Development Authority. Now the market, if you see the size of the tenements, uh, uh, if let's say there are some kinds of projects where you have the buyers who are masses, and some projects, a few of them, where you have a class of people who can afford it. It's only the sales could be by invitation only. Here you have Lodas, for some of their projects it was sales only by invitation, whereas in other places it could be anybody and everybody can walk in and buy. You have flats which could be 6,000 square, 7,000 or 10,000 square foot in area, uh, whereas you have one bedroom hall kitchen flats in the range of let's say 350, 400, 450 square foot. Now the more the number of buyers, or more the demand, it is easier to sell these properties. So the sellability of an asset would depend upon a variety of factors. One is whatever is the public demand. So public demand is one aspect. Another one is the compliance with the rules and regulations. For property that is authorized, all the due process has been followed, it is easier to sell this property. If you see, and if the ticket size, that's the value of the property, is not really very high, then it is easier to sell that. You know, if you see the shares of the on the stock exchange, the shares that are more in demand, they command a higher price. At the same time, uh, uh, people tend to go for some certain shares. If shares that have very high value, the split of the shares are split, because then it becomes easier for people to more number of people to buy those. So ease of sellability, and you have uh, the stock exchange, so it's easier to sell shares than sell a real estate property. Um so ease of sellability of an asset, it actually can help in increasing the value of the property. So marketable versus non-marketable assets. You have regular flats, offices, industries, which are marketable properties, whereas there could be some properties like temples, which are not marketable properties really. So they are non-marketable properties. Then there could be some properties which have restricted market, like if you have the utility services, let's say a petrol pump or the LPG godowns, then they have restricted buyers, because the buyers, whoever are there, they need to uh, have some basic qualifications and eligibility. Uh, so especially for the uh, say petrol pump can be bought by anybody, whereas for LPG dealer, if you have to transfer it, then the other person also has to have those uh, 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 registration and recognition by the LPG company. So marketability, non-marketability, and another aspect is the restricted market. So if there is a restricted market, if the number of prospective buyers is less, then the value would not be really go up. The transferability we have talked about. So an asset being transferable or non-transferable. Then there would be some income generating properties versus utilization focus. Income generating properties like the hotels are income generating properties. Then you have schools also, where the income is being generated, and offices also, commercial premises. Now because of the pandemic, there has been an effect on the office premises or sale of office premises and income generation from the office or commercial premises. So if you see, the rentals also have dropped down for the commercial premises to a greater extent as compared to uh, the rentals for the residential premises. Physical aspects is tangible versus non-tangible. Uh, here, there are times, tangible is something that we can touch, and non-tangible is something that we cannot touch. Goodwill and all that is a non-tangible. At times people do valuation of goodwill or a brand. Um, if you recall, there was a time when Kingfisher was considered to be a good brand. Uh, Subsequently, when the promoters of the company, they defaulted, there was an erosion in the brand value. So the non-tangible, there was an erosion. Now tangible is the for real estate, it's the brick and mortar, land and building, plant and machinery. These are examples of the tangible assets. So uh, types of valuations you have, some of the lenders, they have in-house teams for valuations. Then you have third party valuations by Most of us, I believe, we have 21 participants. I believe that they are all practicing as valuers. We are all independent. We are independent. Our opinion is expected not to be influenced by the employer. We are expected to give an independent opinion free of any influences. And third is we have the valuation review is by a peer valuer. A report could be prepared by let's say valuer ABC, firm ABC. Subsequently, because uh, the lender, he wants to, it could be a high value property, or they could feel that there is some issue with the valuation that has been submitted, so they could ask for a peer review by uh, the another valuer. So they would give you a mandate accordingly. See, we had done a valuation of property for a bank, and the bank, they said that they already had three valuation reports for that particular property. And the first valuation report was for the entire property when the developers, they had taken the loan, the project finance. So they had a list of individual units in the property, let's say the flats, the shops, offices, and even areas in basement. And there was a bank in the on the ground floor, and in the basement they had various utility areas like the underground water storage tank, parking area, and besides that they had a strong room also. Now the lenders, they uh, had another, though the first valuation report was for the entire property, which they had stated value of each unit, and it was all summarized and totaled up to give the value of the property. The second valuation was for the premises in the basement. So whatever was the locker area, strong room area of the basement, they had a value of that valuation done for that locker room in the basement. And then they said that the proposal is like the promoters, the developers, they were giving that strong room to a jeweler for uh, storage, and income would be generated out of that strong room. And subsequently, they were going for that lease rental discounting proposal. So they had asked us to do the valuation of that strong room. So I am not an advocate. I am an architect and a valuer. But I gave an opinion to them that it is not prudent to value this kind of premises, or go for mortgage of such premises, because that strong room, as per the approved drawings, was did not have an independent identity. That basement strong room, it was married to the bank premises. So ideally, it was supposed to be used as strong room for the bank premises on the first floor, ground floor. So basement, you have strong room, ground floor you have the bank. These two should have, these two form one unit. It's not that you have a basement strong room which has a separate identity, and bank premises as a separate identity. So I suggested that if by any chance the developers, they default, would the society issue a share certificate for such kind of premises? You please seek opinion from the advocate, and then you take a decision. So they approached their advocate, and the advocate also said, whatever the valuer is saying has a point, so it is better not to go ahead with this kind of a proposal. If he wants to mortgage the premises, he should mortgage the premises that are given on rent to the bank, along with the premises, the strong room in the basement. So that is about the transferability. And the I talked to given you example of the transferability, as well as peer valuation review by a peer valuer. Then types of valuations, how these are conducted. It something could be a desktop valuation, then you have curbside valuation, and then you have full valuation. See, there are some of these institutions like HDFC Limited. They go more of, though we are not working for it, but then whatever I understand from the fraternity or people who have worked for these organizations, they would lay more stress on the repayment capability and the background of the borrower rather than the particular asset, because in their opinion, if the borrower is good, if his profile is good, then he would not default. Even if there is any issue with the property, he would not default. He would make it a point to repay the loan. So at times, they may have got the valuation done from the external agency. The technical team of the lenders, meaning their in-house team, their staff would go see the premises from outside, and he would give his opinion whether whatever valuation has been done by the external agency is correct or not. So it's more of a secondary level assessment. A desktop valuation is, in the current scenario, we have a lot of inquiries for this kind of valuation. Like due to the pandemic, people, the borrowers or the licensees of the borrower, whoever the occupants of the premises, they are not allowing the inspection of the premises from inside. So the banks, as per the RBI directive, they are required to carry out the revaluation of the premises after 3 years. So the banks are asking for this kind of reports, and there are quite a few valuers who are submitting desktop valuations. But there would be this kind of valuation would come with a lot of caveats, disclaimers, and all that. Uh, but even then, it could land up a valuer in problem. Somehow our system has been such that the banks, they want a higher value when the proposal is going to be sanctioned or the loan is going to be granted, and they want a lesser value when the recovery, the loan is to be recovered. So when you are doing a desktop valuation, actual visit to the property would not be conducted. The data that could be available with you, or that could be based on somebody else's report, is being relied upon. So which can be a tricky situation. So, but then people also do desktop valuation. If you are doing desktop valuation of a property for which you already had submitted a report, then you are a better place than valuation done by somebody else, and you are doing desktop valuation of that particular property again. A full valuation is the detailed assessment of the asset with the details of the asset, data of comparables, and all that. So it's always better that we do the full valuation. And I would suggest that anytime when we are doing valuation, it is better to imagine ourselves to be in the shoes of the buyer. So the principle for purchase of any property or any asset remains buyer beware. So uh, the buyer has to take all the due precautions. He has to take all the due care when he is acquiring an asset or purchasing a property. I understand that there was a steel company which took over another steel company, and they had not been aware of some of the issues that were there being sold in the asset that was being sold. So they had to sorry. So they had to take a hit. The buyer had to take a hit. Then there are uh, so if you really, when you are imagining yourself, excuse me for a minute. I'm continuing. So when, if you imagine yourself to be a buyer, And if you look at the property with that particular angle, then I would believe that we would be able to justify our valuation, or we would be able to arrive at a fair market value in a better way. We had done valuation of one of the banks. They had approached us for valuation of a property. They told us that they had 3 flats of a particular borrower, and out of those 3 flats, one of the flats they wanted to release, and they would continue with the mortgage of the other 2 flats. Now the property was uh, a larger flat on the ground floor and 2 smaller flats on the first floor, exactly above the flat on the ground floor. Uh, we had asked for all the appropriate documents, and verification of documents also, is quite important. So we had asked for all the documents, approved drawings, occupancy certificate. As per the approved drawing, there were 3 separate flats which had been, amalgamated. So segregating one flat from the other 2 flats was not an issue from the municipal point of view. Uh, the but legally there was an issue. Legally issue was uh, the document, the sale deed between um, the borrower and the seller. It had stated about the tenancy of one individual, and the property was purchased along with the tenancy. The flat was uh, the flat was occupied by the borrower. There was no tenant at the time of site visit. So when we brought it to the notice of the lender said, "Ki, sir, this is not the first time that we are doing valuation of this property. We had got the valuation of these properties done earlier also. Renewal also was done. So it's more than once that the valuation of the property has been done. And how is it that you are saying that there is a tenant in the property, or there are tenancy rights in the property? It has not been brought to the notice, our notice, by the valuer. It has not been stated in the report also. The title search report by the advocate, it does also is not stating anything about tenancy. So why is it that you are saying so?" I said, "Sir, there seems to be a possibility that the developer and the tenant, they are related parties. From the name I could make out that they are related parties, and they happen to be son and mother, and it could be an arrangement to uh, show that the tenanted property is being sold, so they could show the transaction at a lesser value, and whatever is the cash transaction could be entered through could be made to the son for relinquishment of his tenancy rights." So I said there is a possibility that the relinquishment deed may have been done between the purchaser or the borrower and the tenant, and you should have it on record, because otherwise, if you don't have it on record, uh, they they may come up, if the accountant's NPA, they may come up with transfer another document showing transfer of tenancy or whatever, and you could be facing issues in recovery of the funds granted by you. So, you know, short while ago when we began, I was talking about 2 schools of thoughts. One is, it's only the area into rate that gives the value, but it's not so really. We have to consider the other aspects also. So it's the legal rights for using the property for uh, the use that has been permitted. Uh, uh, I'll give you another example. We had done valuation of a property in Pune. The approvals were obtained for the building. So though the building had approvals, the approval was for only a research facility. So it was a research facility for a particular Ayurvedic product, whereas the activity that was being carried out at site was industrial manufacturing activity. So if there is any change of activity, for that also you have to obtain the approval for change of user, and other things also come into play, because when you say about research activity, not much of effluent is being generated in research activity, whereas when you talk about the manufacturing activity, a lot of other effluents also would be created, and if there are effluents being generated, then uh, one has, the promoter or the developer or the industrialist, he has to take the uh, appropriate approvals from the pollution control board, local pollution control board, or the state pollution control board. If by any chance, it's something like people driving on the road. If somebody who can, many people can drive, but not everybody could be having a license. So if a person is having license, and if he is driving, and if he meets with an accident, and as against that, if you have a person who is able to drive well, but he does not have a license, and there is an accident, the law would take a look at both these acts or of these two individuals in a separate way. It would find the person who does not have a license more guilty, and he would be inviting greater punishment as compared to the other person. So all the licenses, permissions have to be verified by us as valuers, and unless all these are in place, uh, it would be affecting the value of the property. So when we are doing full valuation, we really have to check all these permissions also. So we cannot say that it is left to the lender, or if it is left to uh, the final advocate. We should be in a position to comment on the documents that are required, and if those permissions, licenses have been obtained. I hope everybody is clear and there with me.
Yes.
So we'll talk about the types of values. Market value. Market value of the property is derived through the references, generating the references. Then fair value is one that fairly compensates the owner, derived on the basis of fundamental aspects of the asset. Fair market value is exchange value of asset in a fair market situation. Replacement value is the cost of producing an equivalent asset, ignoring the depreciation. So the replacement, if replacement value or the reinstatement value, they are similar terms, and reproduction value is something, though it sounds similar, but it's not. They are not all similar, because replacement value would be, or reinstatement value would be, producing the asset which serves the same function, and the design and construction also is in a similar way as to the original construction. Whereas when we talk about the reproduction value, it's like whatever was the original kind of construction, the same asset has to be constructed in the new structure also has to be constructed in the same way. So if you have a table which is made, being used, which is in Burmatic wood, uh, and it catches fire, it is no more, it's turned into ashes. If you say replacement value, even a plywood table would do, provided it is serving the same purpose. Whereas when we talk about reproduction value, it is like it has to be, again, you have to get Burmatic wood, and you have to construct you have to make the table in the same way the earlier table was. Same for the buildings also. So if there is an industrial unit, if or an office building or any kind of structure, or a bungalow, if there is a bungalow, if had it been a heritage structure, then you have to, if it is reproduction, you have to reproduce it in the same way. Detailing and designing also has to be same. Whereas if you say replacement cost, then though the original structure may have been a heritage structure, but you have similar construction and spaces which are there in RCC, say reinforcement cement concrete. But so that is the difference between the replacement cost. Realizable value. is the actual value depending on the special transaction terms. So it is net of the expenses for the transaction. You have investment value, value of the asset to its owner without presuming the exchange. Then you have distress sale value. It is
Sir,
under
one
this.
previous slide, sir. Once.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything specific?
Yeah. What is the difference between realizable value and fair value?
See,
Are they not same?
realizable value, you would be reducing the cost of the transaction. No, when you enter into any transaction, generally there is a minor difference between the fair value and the realizable value. So when you say the fair value, whatever, when the person wants to sell a property, there are costs of transactions also. Okay, so it could be the brokerage, or it could be some charges for registration of the documents. So generally, when we say if the fair market value of a property is, let's say, 1 crore, the realizable value could be 95 lakhs or 96 lakhs, and the distress sale value could be, say, 70 lakhs or 75 lakhs or 80 lakhs, depending upon a number of factors, whether the market is a developed market or whether it is a developing market. If it is a developing market, generally the discounting done for distress value is more as compared to a mature, developed, habitable area. And also it would depend upon the overall market conditions. Can I move ahead?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So investment value is value of an asset to its owner without presuming any exchange. Then distress sale value is under distress situation with little marketing. Then you have forced sale value, it's by an unwilling seller, he is forced into the transaction. So when you say about distress sale, distress value, it could be, uh, may not be really to fulfill or repay the loan. The post sale value, when we say, the buyer, the lenders, they want to recover their dues, so um, the lenders want to recover their dues. So the seller may not be really, seller meaning the owner or the borrower, he has a hesitation in sale of that asset, and uh, whereas he may not be under, he is under the obligation to fulfill his financial dues. Whereas when we say about distress sale value, it may not really be related always to the uh, financial obligation. It could be, out of, I know of a person who had to sell his office to for medical expenses of his son. So if the person were to undergo a liver transplant, he is in need of money, he is under distress, and he doesn't have much of a time for marketing the property also, and at the same time he doesn't have much of time for waiting time also. So he is in distress to sell the property. Accommodation value for uh, is a compromise value for non-usable or less usable plots. At times, you have landlocked lands also. Then insurance compensation value, or the replacement value, or the reinstatement cost minus the depreciation. So hello, yeah. So insurance compensation value, or the replacement value, or the reinstatement cost. Uh, we have talked about the reproduction cost and the reproduction cost, replacement cost, and the reinstatement cost. So generally, when the insurance companies they pay any insurance claims, they take into consideration various aspects. One is whether the property is properly insured, the replacement cost or the reinstatement cost is appropriately stated, or whether it is over-insured or whether it is under-insured. So if the property is under-insured, then the owner of the asset, he has to contribute towards making good losses on a pro rata basis. Let's say if the value of the asset is or the replacement value of the property is 1 crore and it is insured for 90 lakhs, then the owner will be required to contribute 10, and the loss, let us say, is 10 lakhs. So the owner will be required to contribute his 1 lakh first, and 9 lakhs would be contributed by given by the insurance company for making good the losses. Now there is a difference between the life insurance and general insurance. Generally, for see, as a basic principle for insurance is if a person has a number of policies and the person dies, then his legal heirs they get the insurance compensation from all the policies, whereas for insurance of a car or insurance of a building, uh, if you are having the insurance is limited to the extent of making good the losses. So it's not for any further income generation or for any further future benefits. It's just to make good the losses. So if a building gets damaged in for whatever reasons, maybe and there can't be any exorbitant claims also. There was a school here in Panvel where they had the boundary wall collapsed because of the flooding, and there was they did not have the certification for the boundary wall, and it was not done as per the drawings issued by the structural designer. So the insurance claim was actually rejected by the insurance company. They said that you don't the way the boundary wall was done, and let's say the loss that the school had to incur was about 10 lakhs. They had to redo it on their own with a RCC wall, for which they had, you have different kinds of boundary walls also. You could be, if it is written, it could be an RCC, masonry, or you could have a Gabion structure, but then it has to be designed and certified by a competent professional. So the insurance companies, they are in business of insurance. They are not there for charity, so they would tend to reject the claims for whatever reasons that they can find, and they have a team of people there to reject the claims. So if you buy a vehicle also, new vehicle, if you are buying the insurance company, insurance is in the name of the owner. Whereas if you are, many of us may not really be aware that if you buy a used vehicle, if you're buying a used vehicle, a second-hand vehicle, then at the time of the transaction, you really have to intimate to the insurance company that there is a transfer of ownership that is happening. The company would inspect the asset, and they would take the name of the buyer in their records. Otherwise the claim can be repudiated on the under the pretext that the new owner does not have any insurable interest in the property. Book value is based on the accounting principles. uh, Whatever the let's say the market value of a property could be we are in 2020, the market value of a property could be 1 crore today, but it could be purchased for, let's say, 2 lakhs 30 years ago or 35 years ago. It could, so that's the book value. Then auction reserve value is the uh, minimum realizable price that is assessed for the auction process. Then you have breakup value or the liquidation value. It's a piecemeal sale value that can either be that can be orderly or it could be post liquidation. So the uh, if we are doing business valuation, then we do the valuation of a property as the valuation as a going concern value is on as is varies basis for the entire stack. Whereas when it is to be liquidated, it could be on a piecemeal basis. The assets at different locations, they could be sold individually. Let's say the land and building could be sold separately, the plant and machinery could be sold separately, and if there is adequate time for liquidation, it would be done in an orderly way. If there is less of time, then it becomes a forced liquidation for fulfilling the obligations. Fear value, value under unusual external fear or pressures. Then hope value is based on the possible future event. Pessimism value is based on some anticipated negativity. Enterprise liquidation value is going concern value less liabilities. See, at times the developments in the locality, they can affect the value of a property. Let's say now I'm in Navi Mumbai. There are some the construction of the metro stations is in progress. So as the work progresses, there would be an appreciation or increase in the values of the property, which could be closer to the metro stations, especially for the commercial users. Um now, as against that, if there is an announcement for uh, a dumping yard, mm, or an effluent treatment plant in a particular locality, then the prices or the values of properties in that locality can decline also, because they could be having the nuisance of the smell or the fleas, flies, and all that. So um, that is one part, and second part is, in case any event is there, let's say if there is a war between the two countries, then the properties which would be closer to the boundary, the international boundary, people would like to liquidate and liquidate their assets and flee. So there can be some fear also. Lucrative asset value, that is the high ownership benefit value. Then synergistic value, the acquisition enhances the value of another property. uh, uh, you have backward integration being done for some of the manufacturing activities. And I had read about an incident where a cement company, they had some orders for supply of cement, and their existing capabilities were not good enough to fulfill the demand. So they got the valuation of another similar unit, and since the sellers, they were also aware of the need of the purchasing company, the deal was stuck at a price that was higher than the market value, because the and the company also, the purchasers company also, they also purchased that asset, because if they had not, if they had gone for a greenfield project, meaning you start from a scratch and then construct the cement plant, and then you think of supply fulfilling the demand, then it would have taken a longer time. In the process, somebody else could also have gone away with part of the order, so the losses that the company would have incurred would have been more. So they weighed the pros and cons, and uh, they went ahead by paying a higher price for the other cement company. So annual letting value, it is generally by the computed by the municipal authorities for the rental to derive the or compute the tax. Then monopoly value is the source is being controlled. It could be if you say the um, I hope let's say material some supplies like fuel, say the petrol, there's the state monopoly, so it is being sold at a particular value including taxes and making good other uh, uh, subsidies done for other social uses also. So but the state is having a monopoly on such items. So if there is a control on the source, then it can result in monopoly, and the value resultant value is the monopoly value. And you have the mortgage value saved to lend money against. Net present value is the replacement cost adjusted for depreciation. Then the notional value, it is the hypothetical value based on some economic or financial principles. Then existing use value is just contemplating that there is no change in the use of the asset even if the feasibility exists. Let's say we are doing a valuation of a warehouse here in Mumbai. It is on a peripheral area, and the location is such that no, it is it is convenient for JNPT, that is Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust. The materials and goods that come that are imported or the goods that are to be exported, they can conveniently be stored in that warehouse. There is a good rental income that the operators they are getting, and by virtue of the location and because of urbanization over a period of time, the land that was once outside is now close to the residential developments. So there is a feasibility of converting that into a good residential project. If you see the land dynamics, we would be reading about it later also. The land dynamics generally has the highest and best users, the potential value that's based on the highest and best user factoring in the alternative use. Now if I say for the same property, warehouses, the structure could be constructed for, let's say, 800 to 1100 rupees a square foot. So the cost of construction is also not really very high. Whereas if you see the residential building, it could be anywhere between 1500 to 2000 or 2500 rupees, depending upon the number of floors and kind of construction. And the value, the FSI permissible, if you see, if you are going for, if it's a warehouse, the permitted FSI could be zero point 0.5 only, or it could be, lesser than that. It could be 0.1, 0.5, or 1, depending upon the zoning provisions. So the adding up the land value based on the FSI permissible and the uh, uh, value of the warehouse structures above, that would give us the existing use value. Whereas the potential, if you see, it has got potential for the commercial showrooms along the highway, and in the interior you can have the interior portion of the property, you can have good residential development that are easily accessible. So is the highest and best use as the habu. So factoring in the alternative use.
What do you mean by Habu, sir?
Highest and best use. Highest and best use. So we talked about these two things. One was warehouse. Though existing use is a warehouse, but if you consider the highest and best uses, then along the road you could have the showrooms and commercial shops, or something like a departmental store, because it has got a good frontage. So on the front side you have the commercial use, and in the interior, by virtue of the location, since it is accessible from the railway station and bus depot and all that, it's not too far, I would say. So it could be converted into a residential development also. So that becomes an example of Abu. I'll give you another example. One of my clients, he had
Is
purchased.
Habu abbreviation or something
It's an abbreviation. It's an abbreviation. Highest
highest,
and best use.
highest,
Highest and best use.
highest and base use? Okay, okay, thank you.
बेस्ट सबसे
Best
अच्छा
use.
क्या यूज हो सकता है उसका.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll give you another example. One of my clients, he had purchased uh, duplex units on the ground and first floor. In this is in Navi Mumbai. He purchased 2 units. So he purchased entire ground floor that is facing the road, and first floor, which was internally connected um, through the living. They had living, kitchen, and bedroom on the ground floor for 1 unit. Similarly, for the other unit also, it was a mirror image. And on the first floor, they had bedrooms and a family lounge and toilets. Now, what the client did, he the commercial potential in that particular locality or the commercial plots, they had already been sold. So, as per the SIDCO, that is City Industrial Development Corporation, which is the government of Maharashtra undertaking, and it was Special Planning Authority in Navi Mumbai. So, as per their norms, if the commercial plots have already been sold, it is possible to convert the part of existing buildings into commercial use. So what the client did was he purchased these units, and he converted the shops on the ground floor. He converted the flats on the ground floor to shops, and first floor he modified and converted that into one larger flat. So by just whatever I'm just by selling one shop, he could gain the total consideration that he had sold for both the units. जो दोनों फ्लैट्स के लिए जो उन्होंने पैसा दिए खरीदने के लिए जो कीमत थी, वो एक ही शॉप से उनको मिल गई वो. So rest all remain the bonus for him. So highest and best use is a abbreviation. Whatever is for a particular location, for a particular property, it's not always that commercial uses are better uses. Let us say, I'll give you another example wherein we had proposal for project finance, and uh, the approvals were obtained for uh, office buildings, the commercial buildings, and subsequently the developer, he preferred to change the use from commercial to residential, because the a lot of mill lands got freed up in Mumbai, and a lot of commercial developments were coming up in that locality. So the developer thought, the rates for commercial premises would go down, and whereas by virtue of the location, residential demand would be more. So it's a function of a number of factors. So as valuers, we should be able to take this into consideration also. So highest and best use is not, if you see the development and the land dynamics, generally the industries, they would be on the they would not be close to the residential area. They would be away from the city or the town. They could be more towards the areas away, whereas commercial buildings would be towards the city center, and people would like to stay uh, in peaceful locality. So wherever within a given area, if there is some secluded area for residential uses, it would command a higher premium as compared to, now here in uh, Navi Mumbai, we have different nodes. It's a nodal development. Vashi is there. Then you have nodes like Belapur, Vashi, Nerul, Koparkarne. Vashi was the first node that was developed by SIDCO in Navi Mumbai. So Sector 17 was developed as a district business center, and in Belapur you have CBD, that is Central Business District. So district business center, the commercial rates, they could be in the range of 60,000 to 1 lakh rupees on carpet area for commercial use. The residential also, once upon a time it was quite convenient when it was developed, maybe in 1980s. It was quite convenient, close to the station, railway station, then close to the bus depot, and commercial, all social facilities are also within walking distance. Now, over a period of time, what has happened? The commercial developments are increasing in that particular locality. So some of the flats, they are also getting converted to, though unofficially, they are getting converted to office uses. And when the building and the node that, or the sector was developed, the parking requirements were not really very high. So most of the buildings are ground plus 7 or so. Whereas over a period of time, there has been development in India, and the car ownership also has increased. Since the car ownership has increased, people in sector 17, they have inadequate parking. They have to park their cars. It could be luxury cars or high-end cars also. They have to park it. Many of them, they have to park it on the road, which is not really a happy situation. So then people are preferring to move out to new developments, uh, which are, again, comparable as far as locations or accessibility is concerned. For a car owner, uh, being close to the station or away from the station really hardly matters. But they would prefer to go for places where they get a better view, more peace or better view, and of course adequate car parking spaces. In some of the projects, you could have two car parkings per flat also. So these are some of the aspects for highest and best use. Now, if you see the mill lands in Mumbai, they have got converted to malls or gated communities, because as compared to the mill or textile or industrial use or service industry use, residential and commercial, they happen to be better uses. So for a particular property, what can be the best possible use is what we have to take into consideration for Habu, that is highest and best use. I hope it is clear.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Right. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And prestige value for unique iconic objects far in excess of its utilitarian value. Now, if you see buildings like Samudra Mahal, you have who's who there. The industrialists would be there, who would be occupying those flats there, and we have some of the film actors and actresses, occupying the flats in the building. So people consider that it's prestige to have that kind of a flat in that project. So it's a prestige, So it's the prestige value. They would be willing to pay more. It's not just by virtue of the location, but also the profile of the occupants. Uh, I'll give you another example. Like here in um, Navi Mumbai, a majority of the area that was acquired by Sidco or the government, they have given compensation to the uh, landowners whose villagers from whom the lands were acquired. The compensation was given in two forms. One was a monetary compensation, and the other was in the form of developed plots. When the developed plots are given, initially they were not transferable. Then subsequently, the government realized that they are losing on the stamp duty, registration fees, and anyway, people are investing in it. It is with their own funds or cash or whatever. So they were losing on their revenue, and even transfer fees was also being lost by the Sidco, because these are all leasehold lands. If you want to buy a flat, or if for people who have purchased flats in the uh, projects that were developed by the developers as joint venture projects, then those buyers, over a period of time, they start repenting. Whereas when the entire project is the land is purchased by the developer and he starts selling individual units to individuals, all the units are sold by him. It's not a joint venture project between the landowner and the developer. The values of property in such on such lands is more. The reason being, somewhere at the back of the mind, the landowners, they have that it is their land, and others, whoever are occupying the other flats, they are outsiders or not exactly intruders, but then something of that kind is what is there in their mind. So it really affects they do not contribute towards the repairs, maintenance, or their way of dealing with the other flat owners also could be odd. Let's say you have a parking space, you purchase a parking space from the developer in such project. Hmm. Uh, the landowner, he could come and harass you also. He could be parking just outside your car parking space, and he would say, "I am not parking your car parking," but he could be blocking your car parking. So it could really be a nuisance for no, let's say, and he would say that if whenever you come, you can call me, I will remove my vehicle. Now if you are returning late at night, let's say 12:30 or 1 o'clock at night, and if you want to wake him up, do you think that he will wake up, or without any grumbling? So these are small things that also really affect the values of property. So it is generally it is advisable that you as buyers, we uh, check whatever are the interests that people have, or whatever are the rights and interests. So there is a difference between there can be difference between the rights and the interests. The rights are established; they are all legal rights, and whereas interest is something that you may not be able to really establish, but at the same time you could be hindering the process of transfer. Okay, so uh, and as I said earlier, when we are doing the valuation of property, it is always better that we imagine ourselves to be in the shoes of the buyer. So when we conduct the visit, or when we are studying the documents, it is better that we study the documents in a proper way. Generally, the grievance of the uh, lenders, in a falling market scenario, or when the economy is not really good, is that they are not able to recover their dues. So I think all of you would be aware that as valuers, we are required to give indemnity bond. The draft valuers bill also, they had mentioned about the valuers making good the losses that are being suffered by the lenders. So uh, all these things are actually arising because of various factors. It could be the people who are sitting in the chair, the lenders, the bank staff, the advocates, and the valuers. If we are thinking of a compartmentalized approach, then it may not really work in most of the cases. So it is better that we do justice to what we are expected to do, and we are also paid justifiably and reasonably well, so that we can protect the interest of the lenders or whoever are the recipients of the report. So now moving next to the I have given you another example of the prestige value, the 180 degree or totally opposite of prestige value. I have given you example of prestige value also, and I have given you the example of the other extreme also. Then salvage value is the value of the object that is uh, past its official life, but it is still useful. uh, I hope it is clear to you. You have an asset which is expected to last, let's say, 30 years, or if it is a machine, let's say 25, 30 years, and it is still serving your purpose. Let's say a printing press, it could be printing it could be serving your purpose. You could be able to run out of it, but it has already exceeded its life of 25, 30 year or whatever. Or a building which is designed for, let's say, 60 years, a normal building is 60 years or 70 years, it is still continuing to serve the purpose. Now, if you say whatever could be the value of the press beyond its life of 30 years, then it becomes the salvage value. The scrap value is the value of the object past its usefulness and in junk form. Now, if you remove if the building is demolished, the scrap dealers, they buy the steel and other materials, thick wood or whatever the objects that can be salvaged from that, or they could be sold in market
Sir,
for
1 minute. One
yeah,
submission.
yeah,
So can we say that salvage value is on after a lapse of standard life? Standard life means, as you said,
yeah, yeah.
concrete
Whatever is
building
the design
after
life,
6 years.
yeah, salvage life is after whatever is the design life.
Design life.
Huh.
So we
And
can
scrap,
say directly after the value after its standard life, but it
yeah,
should
yeah,
be useful.
yeah,
It should be of same use or some useful.
yeah. That use is being continued.
Yes.
Let's say ammonia printing machine. You have ammonia printing blueprints being done by the for drawings and all that. You have tracing plots and blueprints. Now, blueprinting machine could be there for use for maybe say 10, 15 years. Now, a new set of machines with different designs and faster speeds also could be there in the market. So somebody wants to use it for a commercial purpose, would like to have more output, so you could go for the latest ones, giving better yield. Whereas somebody who does not really want to have exploit it on a commercial basis, he would say, yeah, okay, if he's getting something, the new one is being new with the latest design is there for let's say 10,000 rupees, and the old one is being sold for let's say 1,500 rupees. He would say it is serving my purpose. I don't have to take out hundreds of blueprints every day. 5-10 है तो मुझे 5 मिनट की जगह पे अगर तुमने मुझे 10 मिनट भी लगता है तो भी मुझे चलेगा. Whereas somebody who's using it for commercial purpose, you would say, okay, instead of if it is giving me 50 prints, instead of 50 prints, it is giving me 100 prints, and I can earn more out of it over a period of time. It would work out to be economical. So, जो 1500 में जो ले रहा है, 1500 में जो बेच रहा है वो, that is the salvage value.
So what I mean is present value of the building. Say building is there, present value, and minus 60 years. Say suppose 60 years. 60 years depreciation निकाले तो वो salvage value आ सकते हैं क्या? Is there in such representation of salvage value?
Yeah, you have the depreciation and
Of 60 years.
whatever still remains, there is the salvage value. And the difference between the two is like scrap value, you have to, that structure has to be demolished.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
uh, it is in demolished form, it is removed, structure is removed, the steel is taken away, it is being sold, the timber is being sold, and the concrete or whatever bricks and all that they are removed are also sold for some filling or something. So that becomes the scrap value. And sentimental value, depending upon the sentiments like the emotional attachment or the memories that you have with a particular structure. Say a person, if he were uh, born in a particular house or a bungalow, and uh, for some reasons, if the parents they tend to sell it, uh, and there are some good old childhood memories, uh, you have sentiments attached to the property, then it becomes a sentimental value. You would like to buy it at any cost. You could be willing to pay a higher value also. Say if the market value of that property is say 50 lakhs, whereas since you have memories attached to it and you have want to have it at any cost, you don't want to leave that property, you could be willing to buy it at let's say 55 lakhs or 60 lakhs also, because of the memories and the attachment you have for that property. Sigma value or the lowered or impaired due to some negative reasons. See, now a lot of news are there about uh, Sushant Singh Rajput being, he died in a flat. Whether he committed a suicide or whether he was murdered remains a different story. But the point is, would how many people would really like to buy a property wherein some mishap has taken place? So the value of that property would be lesser than the adjoining property. Here in Mumbai, there are a few buildings which have which are overlooking vast greenery. Uh, the quality of construction also is quite good, though the building could be more than 50-55 years. They could last for another 30, 40, 50 years also. Maintenance of the property is also quite good, and it's partially overlooking the sea also. But there have been quite a few instances of loss of lives, not by natural way. There is no place on earth where a person doesn't die. But if it is unnatural death, then it is drawing a stigma. मे बी अगर कोई पुराने कोई शहरों में वगैरह भी कभी कभी कोई सेक्लूडेड जगह पे कोई घर वर रहेगा तो लोग बोलते उसको अरे वो तो भूत बंगला है. So it is something of that kind. There is a stigma value, and these kind of properties they could be they would generally be sold at a lower rates. So special value specific to an asset or user having specific use, special use. Short while ago we talked about the cement plant also. So it was a special value for that particular manufacturer. It's not that everybody would be willing to pay that kind of a value at all points of time. So it was a special value, you can say. You want to have a break? If you want to have a break, tell me. 5 minutes or whatever. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Break.
Yes, sir. Better give break of 5 minutes. Thank you.
हाँ ठीक है तो let's have a 5 minutes break and we'll resume after
Thanks.
5. Yeah.
नंतर झाला का शिकवून
Should we start? Should we start?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We are talking about the international valuation standards. It is the International Valuation Standards Council that formulated these standards. So, basic principles, concepts that are generally recognized and are required to promote the transparent and consistent valuation practices. Uh, so, there has to be some standardization. So, we have the International Valuation Standards. So, it has got three major components: IVS framework, that is the general principles, then IVS general standards, conduct for all valuation, basis of valuation approaches. Then you have the IVS asset standards. These are specific to the types of different types of assets. IVS 2020. You have the market value, then you have the market rent, then you have the equitable value, the investment value, the synergistic value, the liquidation value. We have covered some of these in the previous slides. Market value as per IVS. It is market value is an estimated amount for which an asset or a liability should exchange. So earlier that word liability was not there; it was only asset. Then subsequently that liability also has been inserted. The estimated amount for which an asset or a liability should exchange on the valuation date between a willing buyer and a willing seller at an arm's length transaction after proper marketing and where the parties had each acted knowledgeably, prudently, and without any compulsion. Some of these terms they are highlighted. The first one is the estimated amount. So it's an estimate of an asset. So it's an estimate of price and where the uh, asset or a liability should be exchanged in monetary terms. It's on a given date of valuation. So it's valued for that date. All of us we have seen the effects of various the government measures or policies that are taken, something like demonetization. I think demonetization it was announced on 8th of November 2016. Then you have the pandemic also that came in a few months back. That's in mid of March we had the pandemic. You must have seen that. No, and personally even I know of some cases where the deals were stuck sometime in the first week of November or towards the end of October. They had to be reviewed and revised or at times cancelled also, because whether you like it or not, whether the government wants it or not, there at times there is a cash component to the deal. And for if for any reasons any kind of policies are declared that can affect the value, something like demonetization, then value of the property as on say 7th or 8th of November would be different than 2 days later, because people would not be willing to accept cash, because if somebody is accepting monetary, compensation or the consideration in cash partially, he would be required to uh, see as to how he is going to manage that cash. So that date of effective date of valuation is quite important. Even let's say in current scenario, because of the pandemic, the uh, income for the people has got affected. The expenses are being incurred mainly towards the essential goods rather than any luxury items. So properties or assets that are there as luxury items would get affected. Yesterday I was talking to a valuer friend, and he said that there was a flat in their society for which a deal was negotiated after due deliberations on sometime in the first week of March, and it was to be concluded by end of May. But and the buyer had given a token also. He had given a token of 1 lakh rupees. So because of the pandemic, he said the buyer was the seller. The buyer said that he is not able to go ahead with the deal because he was to liquidate some of his shares, and the share market crashed. Since the share market crashed, the value of his shares had eroded, so he was not in a position to go ahead with the deal. Now the seller also gave him an offer, though they had negotiated for 2 crore 10 lakhs. He said it's okay even if he is paying anything between 2 crores or 2 lakh 1 lakh 2 crores 1 lakh 2 crores 2 lakhs. He was really willing to settle for a lesser value also. But in spite of that, the deal did not go through. The buyer backed out and he said that you can forfeit that 1 lakh that I gave you. I don't want to go ahead with the deal. So you know the date of valuation is important because of some basically because of the macroeconomic and microeconomic conditions or the regulations. We had various acts also earlier, something like the Urban Land Ceiling Act. It has been repealed. However, the value of a property in would have got affected because of these acts. If you have a property which is say 5,000 square meters or 10,000 square meters in city like Mumbai, and there is no restriction on you to sell that property, it would command a better price. Whereas once the act like ULC Act is there, Urban Land and Ceiling Act, Urban Land Ceiling and Regulation Act, ULCR it was. So in that case, the uh, this buyer, if the buyer would have been required to uh, surrender a part of the land or hand over constructed tenements to the authority to be sold by the authority. So he doesn't have 100% rights in that property now. So that date of valuation definitely is important. Uh, and another term is the willing buyer and the willing seller. So nobody is forcing. If you have seen the Hindi movies, uh, at times they show कि पहले पुराने जो movies थे उसमें दिखाते थे कि उसको the person is putting a gun on the temple and he's saying you sign the document or you sign the transfer document. Now this kind of things do not really work. It has to be a willing buyer and a willing seller, and it is at an arm's length transaction. So the parties are not related parties; they are unrelated parties. So there is no question of any discount being given to a relative or a friend or something. They are unrelated parties, and proper marketing is done. I remember, we had done valuation of a property. It was a row house in Panvel. The sellers, they wanted to sell the property. They were not here in Mumbai. They were based somewhere in Kolkata, and they wanted to sell the property. They tried for some time, and they had to go back to Kolkata for their regular routine works and business matters. And based on whatever the inquiries that they had carried out when they were here in Navi Mumbai or Panvel, sorry, they had got to know the price of, let's say, about 55 to 60 lakhs was a fair price. Uh, Now, they had put up an advertisement on some websites after going back, and they had given a value of they had they had stated the expected price as some 65 lakhs, slightly higher than whatever was their inquiry or information that they had before leaving Panvel. Now somehow because of some certain developments, some plots being auctioned at higher rates, there was an increase in the overall market rates in the locality. And though the seller, they had quoted 65 lakhs, and somebody uh, has, grabbed that opportunity, and then subsequently the sellers, they realized that by not going back to the locality and not making inquiries again, before putting it on the website for sale, they should have they were at a loss of about say 15 lakhs of rupees. So at times that date is quite important. Market inquiry is important. Then proper marketing time and means of marketing also are important. So all these aspects are important for estimating the market value, and they have to act knowledgeably, prudently, and without any compulsion. So there is no compulsion either on the buyer or the seller, and they are doing it with the full knowledge, about the various aspects of the property, the legal aspects, the uh, compliance, or dues that could be there against the property, or all those dues have to be settled also. So they are acting in a prudent way. So it's between a prudent buyer and a prudent seller, and they are both acting willingly. So that's the basic definition of market value as per Indian international valuation standards. So market value versus equitable value. Market value is between the open market participants having no special advantage or disadvantage, and equitable value is between the identified parties keeping their individual benefits and perspectives under consideration. So the definitions of market value we have seen in detail. So it is open, anybody and everybody can buy it. Whereas for equitable value, the parties are already identified and they already have some interest in the or they want to derive some benefits out of it. Now, real estate valuations and principles and approaches. Real estate and property. Real estate, the land and all things that are natural part of the land, the trees, minerals, and things that have been attached to the land, or the buildings or the site improvements, the enclosure walls and all that, and all permanent building attachments like the mechanical, electrical plants providing services to the building, both below and above the ground. Something like, let's say you have the underground tank. Within the underground tank, you could be having the submersible pumps. Then you have the lift machinery, machine room. It could be at the top, or in the lift pit or whatever. So all that also would form the part of the property. You could be having the diesel generator sets for running the elevators. So that also would be there as a part of the real estate property. And real property is the all rights and benefits related to the ownership of the real estate. That is the legal version of this. So real property is something that you can really see, feel, and touch. It's tangible, and so there are different. Real estate is a bundle of rights. It's
Real,
hello.
real estate and real property. Could you just
Uh,
explain once again?
See, there are
Briefly.
similar terms. This real estate. Real estate is the land, building, and uh, things that are attached to the land and building. Okay, so it's tangible. Now, a real property, when we say, it also would be implying the intangible also. Legal rights are something that you cannot touch upon. You cannot touch the rights. But unless you have the rights in the property, so the terms. Just one second. ए पुष्कर याला चार्जर दे रे पीसीचा.
Yes.
So we are holding real estate, and within the real estate, the person holding the real estate has to have the legal rights also, and he has to derive the benefits also. Now, what are those benefits? Is a bundle of rights. So, one second. तेवढं चाल लांब जाते का ते? Excuse me for a minute, and I'm just charging my laptop. मी तिकडे गुरुजी गेले का? हो. Yeah. So the real property is a bundle of rights. The real estate is a bundle of rights. Now, what are those rights? One is, you have the right to possess. It is your exclusive right to, hold that property or to enjoy that property. Maybe somebody has a farm. huh? He has a field or an agricultural land. If he is, cultivating that land himself, then he has the right to cultivate that land, enjoy the yield or the benefits out of that land, whatever the crops that he is getting. Now, whereas supposing he is giving it to somebody else for cultivation, then though he could be entered, he is, legally right. He has the rights to enter upon his property being his own property, but he will not be able to, uh, take out any crops out of it. If there are, uh, any crops there, he would not be able to take away those crops. So when we say bundle of rights, it's the right to possess or right to enjoy or right to income from that property. So the right to possess is, you cannot be you cannot be removed or evicted from that property. So that is the right to possess. ध्रुव पद है आपका, आपको आपकी जगह से कोई निकाल नहीं सकता है. So having exclusive physical control over the property, then the right to use, it is for personal benefit. You can use it for legally permissible uses. Then the right to manage, how it is to be used, and by whom it is to be used, and what should be the terms of that use. So all these things can be decided by the owner, and the income that is going to be earned out of it is also your income. You don't have to share it or a part of it to anybody else. So the right to income and right to security, it's your security. You are retaining the ownership. Then you have the right to the capital. So uh, if you are holding that property, whatever are the assets, whatever are the money that is involved, so all that is yours. You don't have to share it with anybody else. Then the right to absence of term, that is the right to indeterminate length of ownership. This is for the freehold lands. So you have the freehold lands wherein the length of ownership is not determined. Whereas against that, in Mumbai we have the leasehold lands. Some of the leases could be say 95 years, some could be for 60 years. Now these days, some of the governments they are giving the lease rights only for tenure of 30 years. MIDC has MIDC is Maharashtra Industrial Development Corporation. For them, the lease tenure is 95 years, and it can be renewed once for another period of 95 years. So the tenure of or term of rights is stated in the agreements if it is leasehold rights. Now, somebody who, if it is leasehold property, he cannot enjoy that endlessly. There is a time limit prescribed for enjoying that property. Right to incidence of transmissibility, the power to transfer the ownerships or to transfer the rights, that would vest with the owner. Yes. Prohibition of harmful use. Uh, it is the though it is your property, it can't be used for any.
Veeru. Hi, hi.
Hello. It cannot be used for any illegal purposes or unlawful purposes. It should not harm others. अगर समझिए आपका घर है, तो घर हो या ऑफिस हो या कोई भी जगह है, तो उसमें आप गैम्बलिंग या ऐसे ये नहीं कर सकते हो. The betting or gambling is not allowed in India. So those activities cannot go on, or maybe uh, people have drinks, but unless the premises has that license to serve the drinks for guests, it cannot. Sorry, it is not legally permitted. Uh, uh, Liability to execution, it is the legal responsibility regarding debt and liability towards the seizure of the property. And incident of residuarity. The ownership rights in specific situations may expire or cease, or corresponding rights vest to someone else. So, process of estimation of worth of a property. It is through the value of rights it contains. It is based on the established principles. Then it is for for the certain cause. So the uh, purpose of valuation is important. Whether it is for taxation, whether it is for mortgage. Now we don't have wealth tax, but wealth earlier when the wealth tax was there, the process of valuation for wealth tax was something different. Then process for computing capital gain tax is different. Then for if it is for mortgage purpose, the process is different. It is by analyzing all applicable factors. Then it is for benefits. Whether the property is for the self use or self consumption, or the income flow in the form of rent, income flow in the form of rent or lease amount. Then income in the future in the form of capital gain. Then investment property, you have investment property where the income is in the form of lease rent or the rent. Then income in the future in the form of capital gains. Then you have non-investment property. The flats that we occupy, they have more of self-use than any investment. Income in future in the form of capital gain, though income in the form of capital gain would apply whenever we sell that property, but for a self-use property, it is not an investment property. uh, uh, Day by day, I the government has been reducing the pension benefits to various organizations. I know some people who have invested in the real estate property. They had been getting good rent till February or March 2020. Now, subsequently, because of the pandemic, the rent has got affected. So, investment, though they were occupying some properties where since it's for self use, they are saving on the rent. But whatever was supposed to be their income generation because of by way of rent, it can get affected. And factors affecting the value, you have various factors. One is the social, that is the neighborhood or the profile of the residents, their status. So in our valuation reports, we write about whether it is mixed use or whether it is high class or low class or slums around, or you know now here in Mumbai we have the locations which where uh, it's all elite people who could be staying there. Whereas wherever redevelopment projects are taking place, you in the same project you have LIG people also, and you could be having the sale component buildings, rehab component. You could have people who are lower income group people, whereas the sale component, it could be the higher income groups. So depending upon how is the neighborhood of the property, that would affect the value of the property. And physical or technical is the location, the features of the property, the facilities, cleanliness, aesthetics. So something that we really see when we are going for the site visits, accessibility. The location would govern the accessibility or the means of transport. Then features of that property, whether it is a low-lying area or whether it is subject to flooding. In Mumbai, we have some of the areas which are subject to flooding. In 2005, July 2005, there were a lot of rains here in Mumbai, Navi Mumbai area, and the waterlogging in some of the areas was to the extent of full floor. One ground floor was underwater. Now, for some time, the values of properties in those areas had got reduced. Now, that kind of rains, these they do not. It doesn't rain that heavily every day, every year. So again, after a passage of say about 4 or 5 years, the rates of those ground floor properties which had declined, again they got increased. Cleanliness, maintenance, and all that also plays an important role. Then economical factors is the business economic activities or means of livelihood. Uh, there was a time when uh, Navi Mumbai was more of a dormitory town, meaning people worked in Mumbai, their means of livelihood was in Mumbai, and they lived in Navi Mumbai. Over a period of time, the there has been a shift in the economic activities also. So a lot of office premises have got developed here. Industries, of course, were there in close to Navi Mumbai. Some of the industries there have been, transformed from manufacturing activity to service activities, or some of these are into office premises also. So a lot of economic activity also is happening. So if the economic activity increases, then uh, the value of the property or the locality increases. Now we have the proposal for the international airport in Navi Mumbai. Every time there is some news, of course, it's not about today that I'm talking, because today the market condition is something different. Whereas say 8-10 years back, there used to be some amounts, there used to be some announcements by the government about the airport. Now these were being used by the developers to lure the prospective buyers. They used to say अभी एयरपोर्ट जो है वो तो यहाँ से 10 किलोमीटर है, 5 किलोमीटर है, अभी एयरपोर्ट यहाँ पे आएगा तो सब रेट बढ़ेगा. तो and it could be increased say 100 rupees over a week also. So airport actually, though most of us are not required to go to the airports every now and then, but an infrastructure project like airport, it generates a lot of economic activity in the surrounding area, and so it leads to increase in the value of the property. uh, Legal aspects, there is the development control regulations, DC regulations we say, then ownership restrictions, then nature of titles, the covenants, the restrictive covenants, the potential for land use alterations, rent control, etc. So uh, we have talked about some of these aspects earlier. Just ये wire खाली अड़की हुई. Yeah, so legal aspects are quite important, because as I said earlier, it's not just the uh, brick and mortar that we value. It is the legal rights that a person has that are quite important. The development control regulations, they would be governing the uh, various types of uses, whether it is residential, commercial, or mixed use development. That is one part. There is the zoning part. Then second thing is the permissible FSI. So permissible FSI is dependent upon a number of factors. If it is a redevelopment project, the FSI is more. If it is, let us say, the road width, it is also linked here in Mumbai. It is linked to the road widths also. So there could be two properties which could be next to one another. So one of the properties could be on a 6-meter road, and the other property, being a corner property, could be on a 6-meter road as well as a 30-meter road, or maybe 20-meter road. So utilization of TDR, that is transferable development rights, is not possible on narrow roads as per the regulations by Mumbai Municipal Corporation or Thane Municipal Corporation. So the development potential of that property would be adversely affected if the TDR cannot be loaded on a property or it cannot receive the TDR. The development control regulations and the changes in these also matter a lot. So if you are this would hold good more for project valuations, because generally when we do the valuation of individual units, we already have the approvals in place. Whereas when it is to be done for the project finance by lenders, for or the developers are availing loan from um, uh, the banks, then the approvals may or may not have been obtained. If the approvals are not obtained, then we definitely have to state it in the assumption that the development control regulations as on date are considered, because at times the authorities, they also go on a flip flop. The regulations that are applicable today may not be applicable tomorrow. So the value of the property gets affected, the yield basically gets affected. Let's say if it is a 1,000 square meter plot, let's say there are two plots of 2,000 square meters adjacent to one another. One is on a 2,000 square meter, one is on the 6 meter road, the other one is on the corner plot, as I said, maybe on a 20-meter road. The TDR could be loaded on the corner plot because it is also abutting 20-meter road. Whereas if it is on 6-meter road, you get the in situ FSI only. So it could be just 2,000 square meters you can construct if it is FSI 1. Whereas on the other plot, you can construct, let us say, if you could, one situ, in situ FSI would be 1, and additional TDR could be loaded to the extent of 1 or 0.75 or 1.25, depends upon the local regulations. So when you are doing valuations of such properties, you really need to have an update, and you should be asking their local professionals rather than assuming the things, or depending upon the data that is given by the client or client's professionals. One should not really depend on the data that is given by them, especially the unsigned data. And ownership restrictions could be there. The nature of titles, it could be freehold, leasehold. So then there could be some restrictive covenants. The property could be used only for particular uses, and potential land use, of course, would be governed by the regulations. So these are really important. So that's the reason why when we began in the morning, I said that architects have, to an extent, the advantage of doing valuations for especially the project finance, because in English they say there can be a gap between the cup and the lip. So I know of a few incidences where the projects were on the verge of approval, everything was scrutinized, but it was not signed by the authorities, and some gazette notification is published, and some additional approvals are required to be obtained, and it delays the overall process, or even include the developable area also. So Habu is the highest and best use. Somebody had asked about what is Habu. So it is the highest and best use. The application of asset that maximizes the productivity of the asset. It is to be used legally. The use is legally permitted. Use it is possible from the market point of view, and no, the perspective that the alternative uses do not match the returns. So uh, I was talking to you like about the industrial areas around Navi Mumbai. There is the Trans-Thane Creek area. Uh, no, in Mumbai, we had the textile mills. Then we also had some small units in the service industry or flatted industrial areas in Mumbai. Eventually, when the buyers and the people in the surrounding areas, they thought it is better to shift these industries or polluting industries to outside areas, and they were shifted beyond Navi Mumbai. That is the Taloja industrial area, or uh, Trans-Thane Creek industrial area. Now, over a period of time, the owners of those property, when I say owners, I would include the lessees also, because these are all leasehold lands. The lessees of these properties, they realize that the income that they are generating by way of the manufacturing activity that is being carried out them by them is less than actual value of that asset, the land especially. So what they did is they would prefer to shift their industrial manufacturing activity elsewhere, and they could be developing that property themselves for office use, or they could be using it for some other activity, which can fetch them more yield or better returns. So the productivity of that asset is increased, and it is legally permitted. If you say industrial use, for a chemical industry, the FSI was 0.8. For a non-polluting industry, the FSI was 1. Whereas if you say in information technology building or a biotechnology building, the FSI is 2. It gets doubled. So if the FSI gets doubled, you get more area for sale and you get more, revenue out of it. So it is legally permitted. It is subject to some payment. So those also have to be accounted for. And from the market point of view, also it is, feasible and possible. I know of some industrial areas where the industrial units, the manufacturing sheds, they were removed and RCC structures were constructed. The cost of RCC structure could be in the range of, if it is for heavy industry, it could be in the range of say about 1600 to 1800 rupees a square foot, and loading the land cost and all that and profits, the builder was expecting in the range of 3500 rupees a square foot. Whereas if the vacant lands with sheds, they are available at a rate of let's say 2000 rupees a square foot, people would generally tend to go for that kind of structure rather than getting into an RCC structure for the manufacturing activity. So though it was legally permitted to construct the industrial estates, RCC structures, but from the buyer's perspective and from the market perspective, it was not really viable. So these things can also happen. So blindly we should not be going by the information or the details that are given by the interested parties, because after all they are interested parties and they can tend to misrepresent also. And the alternative uses that we are talking about, these do not match. Say if you are talking in terms of industrial manufacturing activity, it is not the highest and best use when the urbanization takes place. So it can yield you lesser returns. Even in cities or towns or metro cities that we see, some of the old shops, um, which wherein a lot of people could have their memories, but they are transformed over a period of time. Something like कोई ईरानी रेस्टोरेंट रहेगा, तो ईरानी रेस्टोरेंट है वो सालों साल चलता रहेगा, आप जाके उधर आराम से बैठ सकते हैं. You could spend your time. It could be replaced by a coffee shop, CCD, or it could be replaced by a McDonald or any fast food outlet, wherein people could be there only for a short time. So the turnover is more, turnaround is also more, and the revenue generation also increases. So whatever is the highest and best use for that particular property within given parameters, especially from the development control regulations, that and whatever would yield the maximum revenue, so that is the highest and best use. Urban infrastructure and influence on the valuations. The infrastructure development aids the urbanization, which brings housing development both physical and policy level. It aids the economic development and income growth, affects property prices positively. Social infrastructure is a strong catalyst for human settlement and thus price escalation. Uh, for infrastructure, you have physical infrastructure and you also have the social infrastructure. Physical infrastructure is like the network of roads, railways, transport communication. Then you have the water supply, sewerage lines. So that is the physical infrastructure. And social infrastructure is something like the schools, colleges, temples, places of worships. So these are the requirements for the people to live. So all these give a value addition to the property. This Navi Mumbai, though the uh, physical infrastructure had been quite good and it has been almost the same all these years, the rates started increasing because of the economical development and the increase in the social infrastructure. For I do not really know the places from which you are, your native places or wherever you are living right now. So I'm sorry that I wouldn't be able to give examples that are identifiable, easily identifiable by you. But if the economic development in terms of, say, the airport is there or the metro lines are being laid, infrastructure development is there, then the rates tend to increase. If the transportation linkages are well established, uh, let's say earlier in Mumbai metropolitan region, we had local trains from Mumbai to Mankurd. Mankurd is across the creek. It is in the main. It is in the island, towards the island city of Mumbai, whereas Navi Mumbai is towards the mainland. A part of it is reclaimed land, meaning filling has been done in the portions of creek and sea, and the city is developed. Now, when the railway tracks they were only till Mankur, the rates of properties in Navi Mumbai were much lower because people had to travel from Navi Mumbai to Mankur by bus or any other means of transport, and then from Mankur you would go to VT or other places within Mumbai. Now, once once the uh, transportation linkages were developed in Vashi, the trains were extended to Vashi, the rates in Vashi increased. Then it was extended to CBD Belapur, the rates in the intervening areas also started increasing. Similarly, we have Karjat. From beyond Karjat is Khopoli. Now, when the train extended towards Khopoli, the rates again increased. So, infrastructure development and urbanization, infrastructure development, especially the transportation. But so, if the uh, infrastructure, especially the transportation linkages are improved, that is, the public transport is improved, a lot of lands around the metro cities they open up for development, and it leads to the increase in the property rates. Principles in valuation. It's the principle of anticipation. We'll cover these in detail later. No, I'll just go through this. Principle of anticipation, principle of balance, principle of change, principle of competition, principle of conformity. Within that, you have principle of progression and principle of regression. Then principle of consistent use, principle of contribution, then insurance valuation, then principle of external factors, principle of increasing and decreasing returns, then principle of substitution, principle of supply and demand, then principle of surplus and productivity. Now, the principle of anticipation. The principle of anticipation, it states that the current value of the asset is the function of the future anticipated benefits, materials, and otherwise from the asset. So, if there are going to be any uh, you know mm, future benefits that can be derived by the users of those properties, just one second. So, if there are going to be any developments around anticipated to, then it can lead to increase in the cost of the uh, it can increase the property rates there. Principle of balance. The principle of balance states that a value is created and maintained when the amount and location of essential types of real estate are in equilibrium. These are also termed as contrasting or interacting elements or factors. So it's not just the pure residential areas that you have, but there has to be an ideal mix of the residential areas, the commercial areas, then
Sir, excuse me.
yeah,
Sir, we were taught that valuation is to be done on the date today, at
yeah.
present, in present. Then that how the principle of anticipation can be taken into account for valuing a property.
Uh, See, it depends upon the purpose of valuation. See, if it is for, especially for mortgage purpose, then something that is in speculation, that goes against the principle. We cannot consider what is speculative. Whereas when it is for actual sale transaction between two individual parties, so the buyers can take that into consideration. I- if what could be the additional benefits that he could be deriving out of that transaction or by acquiring that asset.
Means consideration will be from buyer side, not the seller side, for which valuation is being done.
Seller also would consider that, no? Seller also would consider that. Seller would also say, see, typically when you go to the market, rather than talking about what is there, people tend to talk about what will be there. If a person wants to sell the property, if it is, let's say, a chal in Mumbai, it could be just a one-room kitchen tenement without even a toilet inside. They could have a nani, that is a bathing area, could be there inside, whereas they could be required to use the common WC in common toilet blocks on the floor. Whereas when he wants to sell it, he would not say कि मैं आपको ये one room kitchen बेच रहा हूँ. वो बोलेगा कि भाई आपको जो है अभी you are entitled for 350 square foot of area as per the 300 square foot of area, और उसको बाकी आप नेगोशिएट करके ये करके आपको 400 स्क्वायर फुट जो एरिया है वो आपको मिलेगा. तो अभी उसको थोड़ा समझिए टाइम है, तो इसकी वजह से फिर आप जो है यू पे मी सो मच. So generally, the buyer and seller both are aware. Rather than the buyer, the seller could be more aware of the developments anticipated in that area. So he would try to stress on that more than the buyer. Now, if the buyer is a prudent buyer, he would discount the representations made by the seller. And that is how he would arrive at the price. Uh, I used to frequently go to a hotel in a particular locality, and then subsequently the asset was to change hands. So whoever was running the hotel as only as an operator, he preferred to pay slightly higher price because he had an established business. Even if so whatever are the um, factors or the developments that are going to come in due course of time, people would tend to factor in while negotiating the deal. If you talk in terms of the shares, you have the fundamental analysis and the technical analysis. The difference is, the fundamental analysis is like how are the fundamentals of the company, debt ratio, and all that. Whereas when you they do the technical analysis, the traders, they say that whatever is there in the they are just interested in the short term trades. So whatever are the pros, cons, microeconomics, or developments that are related to that particular industry or that particular sector, all those have been factored in that deal. So to an extent, what you say is correct. That how can we take into consideration that something that is speculative or something that is anticipated? आज जो है वो है. So that to an extent you are right when it is related to the mortgage purpose especially. Whereas I mentioned about the highest and best use. I also mentioned about an example of a warehousing. So if the warehousing land is, let's say, 20-25 acres, at the moment they could be getting, let's say, 1 or 2 crores, 1.5 to 2 crores per month as rental. But if they develop it as a residential project, then and it's legally permitted also. So in anticipation that it can be put to a better use, the developers can give him a better price also. I hope it's clear.
I don't actually. I don't know, but let us see. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, in that case, I have a doubt, Mr. Ravindra. The
Haji?
principle of, I have a doubt in the same thing, principle of valuation, and then one in the start we said that the valuation for transferability. Now, if it's a property which cannot be transferred because of,
Yeah.
like you said, educational institute is building is used for that. So in such case, a lot of people will anticipate like that or no educational building also we can take if it's in a very, commercialized zone. I got confused between the two, frankly.
See,
Having anticipation, then the actual use of the property cannot be like not be transferred or anything.
see, when you talk in terms of an educational building,
Yeah,
generally there are a lot of restrictions. So not all the financial institutes would tend to, or they would prefer to give finance to for development of educational institutions, because there are interests of so many parties that are involved. It's not just the borrower, but beyond the borrower, you have the the staff members. Then you also have the students. Their career also is linked to that particular property. No, there is as an architect, I have designed a project here in Maharashtra. Unfortunately, with the policy flip-flops, their intake that was scheduled to be increased from 50 to 100 did not get increased. So ultimately, it affected their cash flow. So
Reverberation
in anticipation, see,
many reverberation.
just 1 minute. Hey, Pushkar, I hope that
uh,
noise is. Hello. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah, Ji.
see, uh, you have they had the established and sanctioned intake of 50 students per batch.
Yeah,
Subsequently, it was supposed to be increased to 100 students. Okay.
yeah,
So it was anticipated, and accordingly, their cash flows also would have doubled. No.
yeah,
So it was in process, but as I said, there is always a gap between the cup and the lip.
yeah,
So for the bank, it was like bank was saying that you get us the letter for increasing the intake from 50 to 100, and we'll give you additional funds. Whereas the authority, that is the Ayush or the Health Ministry, they were saying they issued a letter that unless you have the infrastructure, we would not be able to sanction the increase the intake from 50 to 100. So it was something like chicken and egg, whether the
oh,
egg comes first or the chick come first. So anticipation में थोड़ा सा ये गड़बड़ भी हो सकता है, but at the same time, if the parties are there, they would be taking this into consideration. And for educational institutions, the buyer class also remains limited. So maybe one educational institution could take over the another, because the students, their courses that has to continue.
yeah.
So
So I think it was just only that buyer class will remain limited because I was thinking of a personal experience that someone like Anil Ambani or Mukesh Ambani came to this
Huh?
valuation was only meant for educational institution, and then they decided like money that there is a loss going on, so we'll convert this entire space into educational space.
Acha, acha.
Based on that anticipation, they changed the entire income part of it.
Yeah. So one thing is anticipation, the other one is the highest and the best use.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
people like whoever are 21 of us, whoever are attending this, or 21, 22 of us, whoever are attending this training,
Yeah.
we are not really all that influential. We are not
Yeah,
influential.
yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, whereas people like Ambani, Adani, or whoever are there, they could be influencing the policymakers also, no?
Yes, yes. That's what happened. That's what happened. Yeah.
Influencing the policymakers is a big game. So they reap benefits out of it. Here in Navi Mumbai, we have Reliance. The economic. Some two, three sectors have been allotted to the Ambanis. It's a special venture between the Sidco and Mukesh Ambani's Reliance.
Yeah.
And for people like you and me, if we were to delay the development, every year we are liable to, the time period for construction is 4 years.
Yeah.
That's yet another aspect that I would tell you about the leasehold and the freehold. If it is a freehold land, you are not liable to the lesser. There is no question of being liable to the lesser because it's a freehold land. Whereas if it is a lessee lesser relationship,
Hmm.
then the you have to comply with the conditions of the lesser.
But sir, as a valuator, can we use the principle of anticipation to increase the value of a plot? Because we cannot do that, right?
See,
We won't be able to do that.
as on date, whatever is the uh, for if it is for mortgage purpose, we definitely cannot take into consideration the speculative aspects.
Hmm.
If it is for actual exchange of hands or transfer of the property,
Yeah.
we could take that into consideration. I gave you that example of the cement factory.
Yes, yes, yes.
The cement factory, it was basically the valuation that was done by the valuer also was slightly higher, and the price that was paid by the buyer company was even beyond whatever the valuer had stated. So
Okay.
it was more than the value that was stated by the valuer. Now, the company had to take approval from the shareholders for that transaction,
Yeah.
and there was a debate, and then finally the majority agreed that had they not gone ahead with that transaction, there would have been loss of revenue. So it was a prudent decision that was taken by the management.
Okay. Okay.
So things are contextual. It is generally with reference to context. So there are so many principles. There could be some contradictions, and in fact, that is the reason why we state what is the purpose of valuation. The purpose of valuation
It's an
would
opinion.
it's an opinion, no doubt. In all the valuations, for all the purposes, they are opinions. But at the same time, purpose is also quite important.
Yes.
If it is for mortgage purpose, we have to be slightly conservative. We
Hmm.
cannot take into consideration that anticipation principle of anticipation.
Hmm.
If it is let's say for exchange of hands for business between the businessmen, then in that case we could take that into consideration to an extent, depend and stating our assumptions and the data that is given by the concerned parties, because there can be misrepresentation by the any of the parties involved also, no?
Yeah, similar to
Yes.
your Navi Mumbai case, sir, because 1997 I was in MGM college in Navi Mumbai, and from 1998 I've been hearing that airport is coming and that Panvel rate was going up.
Yeah, that's true.
Since
That's
1998 I'm hearing that actually.
See, what you say is right. That
Yeah.
see, any new international airport, if that were to come up, it takes a period of about 25 to 30 years. So between the conceptual stage to actual, the flights taking off, it takes anything between 25 to 30 years, and it's not just for India. Even outside also that you have similar time frames. Now in India, it could be slightly more because of being a democratic country with a lot of parties involved and a lot of vested interests,
So
and the
in
transparency being lower.
so in such case only where airport was anticipated in Navi Mumbai, a valuer based on his future principle of anticipation has done his valuation because it was not for mortgage or it was for fair value or anything else, but he cannot get into legal troubles.
So that's the reason why I said, you have to be careful about it. You have to state the data that is given by the owners, whatever are your assumptions and whatever has been your your data that you have collected yourself. And if you have verified that the data that is given to you is realistic or not. So that is one
Yeah.
part. Second thing is, for something like a flat or so, uh, it wouldn't really make much of a difference whether that airport is coming or not. Whereas if it is for something like a star category hotel, then it can make a difference. You have see, you in Navi Mumbai, we have this DY Patil Stadium, sports stadium is there. Now, when the stadium was being developed, it was anticipated that a lot of matches would be played there. It could be IPL or even football matches were played there sometime. And since these sports activities being taking place, the requirement of hotel rooms in Navi Mumbai also have to increase. Whereas 3-4 plots that have been allotted, they have not been developed.
Yes.
Uh, your and where are you? Where are you based?
Yeah, I'm in Mumbai only in Santa Cruz.
Okay, okay, okay. So I think you can correlate more. I don't know about the native places or base where other people are based.
Yeah. No, I can relate to that because that airport problem was a problem. So I was wondering if a valuer will get into legal trouble because he was also anticipating there was a clear-cut news that airport was coming, but it never came. And a lot of people bought properties and now they cannot make use of it.
Yeah, that's true. It's something like an airport. It takes time. That is one part. Second thing is it's a combination of so many factors. When we do valuation, it's a combination of so many factors. It's not just the infrastructure development or it's not just the urbanization. There are economic downturns also. Now, generally, with the layman, the impression has been that the prices tend to go up. Even the bankers also, would ask you if you give a value which would be equal to or little less than the previous valuation. The bankers will question you. अरे अभी तो 4-3 साल पहले किया था तो उसका तभी इतना वैल्यू था अभी क्यों बढ़ा नहीं है वैल्यू तो बढ़ता है ना हमेशा तो बढ़ता ही है so that has been the general perception of the masses that it's only a one way journey whereas real estate prices actually is not a one way journey it can fluctuate anyway. I told you about the Hiranandan here in Kharghar. It's a landmark building. It's just at the corner entry of the
Yeah, I
uh,
know.
Sayan Panvel Road. It's a good building. Construction is also good. A reputation also of the builder is also, being in Mumbai, you are aware that Hiranandani, they enjoy a lot of goodwill. But in spite of that, some of the flats they were sold, initially at 2,200 and subsequently at almost half the price or 60% of the price. So it really depends upon the market also. Even for that matter, even land transactions in here in Navi Mumbai, some of the lands they were sold in the range of 22,000 rupees a square meter in 90s, and subsequently the land rate around 2000, 2001, 2, 3, it was hovering between 4 lakhs to 6 lakhs rupees per uh, uh, gunta, I would say. That is 100 square meters. So 4 to 6,000 rupees. So you have 20,000 rupees earlier for larger plots, and subsequently you have in the range of 4,000 to 6,000 rupees also. So it's dependent upon the overall economic scenario also. Now, even today, who had imagined about the pandemic hitting us, hitting the economical activity? the disposable income or the job security, unemployment, so people would be scared to invest in real estate, which happens to be a big ticket investment.
Yes, sir. Absolutely clear. We'll move on, sir.
Yeah. So principle of balance, it states that the value created and maintained when the amount and location of essential types of real estate are in equilibrium. These are also termed contrasting or interacting elements.
Sound problem is there. You got criticism of this somewhere.
पुष्कर माझा मोबाईल तिकडे आहे ना, चालू आहे का बंद आहे, फोन चालू आहे का, नाही इकडे आवाज यायला लागला तर म्हणून म्हटलं. हॅलो, इज इट बेटर नाउ?
Sir, it's clear, please.
It's
Yeah.
not your fault, sir.
Yeah, principle of balance states that the
That's all
value
right.
maintained when the amount and location of essential types of real estate are in equilibrium. These are contrasting or
No, this is not better. I don't know how others are getting or not. It is not okay now also.
पुष्कर दोन कनेक्शन चालू नाहीत ना? बरं, मग आवाज काय येतो?
Sir, your connections are right, sir. Hare Krishna, sir, your connection is.
Yeah,
Your connection is right, sir. You can continue, sir.
my connection is
Your connection is very good, sir. Hare Krishna, sir, connection is a little problem.
okay.
You continue, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, the principle of balance. So see, since I'm based in Navi Mumbai, I'm giving you these examples, and I do not know about the locations of other people. Otherwise, to an extent, I would have been able to give the examples with which they can also identify. Whenever you have planned development, you have some certain areas that are designated as purely residential areas. Then you have some areas which are designated as purely commercial areas. Whereas over a period of time, there can be changes in these. To give you an example, Sector 17 in Vashi was proposed as a district business center. Now, though it's designed as a district business center, not many buildings are fully commercial. Only a few institutional buildings or banks like Bombay Mercantile or Saraswat Bank, they are fully, commercial buildings. Whereas rest of it was, commercial shops on the ground floor and residential flats on the upper floor. Now, in due course of time, what has happened that the flats have got converted to office use because the requirement of the or demand for the commercial office space was more in that sector. So people started converting flats into offices, though it is not officially allowed. Similarly, some of the places like there are some small LIG houses, row houses with an area of say 30 square meters or 36 square meters, and it's a row of say about 10 to 12 row houses. The rates or the property rates, I would say, are commanded. The units that are on the peripheral roads, they command better rates as compared to those in the interior. So area wise, if you see, it's all 36 square meters throughout. The ones which is on the internal road from which actually the access is to be derived gets a good rate. The intervening units which are sandwiched between the side units, they get less of light and ventilation. Even accessibility also is restricted, or is only a pedestrian access that they get. So the rates for those properties are lesser, whereas the units that are facing the main road from which people should not be deriving the access, they command better rates or the maximum rate because they people have unofficially converted them into commercial units. Now, and this has happened over a period of last 30 years. So people, irrespective of whatever are the regulations, people they tend to find their own ways to satisfy their requirements, and the system keeps a lag. It's not that immediately these things are worked out. So now Siduco also has come out with a public notice and policy to regularize these change of users on payment of some certain premium. Otherwise, and it's not just that if Siduco does it, it is uh, the end of it, because Sidco is the lesser of the property, so they have the rights for the land. So since the property was allotted for residential use, and if the people are using it for commercial use, then the additional benefit has to be shared with Sidco being the landholder, and people will also have to take approvals from Navi Mumbai Municipal Corporation for that commercial use, because NMMC Navi Mumbai Municipal Corporation is the planning authority. So समझिए जैसे सिडको है वो माँ है, तो NMMC वो बाप है, तो माँ बाप दोनों से परमिशन लेना पड़ेगा. So these things can also happen, whenever you have dual authority centers or power centers. So the cost of all these, not just the official cost, but even the unofficial cost also has to be discounted or considered when we are doing valuation of such properties. And it cannot be blanket. So there would be some nitty gritties, because again it will depend upon the road width. It will also depend upon the plot size, enhancement of FSI and all that will depend upon the plot size. So all sorry, all these things also have to be factored in. So uh, conversion of residential premises to commercial premises has happened in places like Vashi. It has happened in some places in CBD Belapur also. The CBD is Central Business District, and I'll give you exactly example which is exactly opposite this. Now, Sector 11 and Sector 15 of CBD Belapur, they were developed as, or they were planned as total commercial development, because this is closer to JNPT. But a lot of buildings in when the builders they purchase the plots, they applied to Sidco for change of user from commercial to residential. So though it was planned as commercial, and generally people have a perception that office use is a better use, but in some places even commercial properties have got converted to residential properties, especially the ones which are facing the creek or the sea. People enjoy living in sea facing properties. So those premises or plots, the land use for those lands or plots has been got converted from uh, commercial to residential. So it's they are interacting. The principle of change. The principle of change conveys that the value of asset affected a lot by the changes taking place in the economic and social forces in the area or the region, sometimes more than its own characteristics. Hence, a value derived on day remains valid for that day only. So we have talked about this, the developments taking place, the infrastructure, and even to an extent we have talked about the economic and social forces. The current pandemic is the best example of the principle of change. So the value of assets has got adversely affected in most of the localities. So whatever value that we give is valid for that day, though the lenders tend to consider it for a period of 2 to 3 months or 4 months for processing of their loan proposals, but value that we give is valid for that day. Principle of substitution. The principle of substitution states that the upper limit of the value of an asset tends to be equally uh, so there is some mix up. It's like no prudent investor would pay no more for an income producing property than it would cost to build or purchase a similar property. So that's the principle of substitution. when a person, the people would always tend to compare. They would tend to weigh the pros and cons. Uh, Whatever you if I told you about the RCC flatted industrial estates in Taloja. So people think that rather than getting into that flatted industrial estate, it is better that they have a small piece of land and they have a shed, an industrial shed. So if that is serving their purpose in a better way, why go for an RCC structure and why get into hassles with the adjoining owner or units above or below you? Principle of progression. The principle of progression states that the value of a property goes up with an increased perceived value of its location. It is observed that less expensive properties do go up in price when more expensive properties come into existence at the locality. So the value of a smaller house will enhance if it's close to a larger, fancier houses. Uh, Now, again coming back to Ambani's, their tagline had been "Kar lo duniya mutti mein." So they want to enter into all kinds of businesses, and they have a large land holdings in and around Mumbai area and other places also. So typically, if you interact with the people in the real estate industry, or especially the brokers or landowners, uh, rather than talking about their own property, they would say कि अरे इधर अभी तो बाजू में अंबानी ने ले लिया है, अभी रिलायंस ने इधर लिया है और ये प्रोजेक्ट होने वाला है, वो प्रोजेक्ट होने वाला है. Maybe nothing could happen on next 10 12 years in that land, but even then, uh, if some kind of uh, somebody who has a better clout buys land or property next to your property, or the property that you are valuing, your price, your property of your value of your property also goes up. See, when I was a student, I studied in Pune. We had this Bharati Vidyapit educational campus coming up at Dhankaudi Katras area. So once that area was getting, when it was in stage of development, earlier people were reluctant to go or buy property there. However, when the college buildings were developed and those started functioning, the property rates in that locality also increased because the hostel facility was not available for everybody. The students needed paying guest accommodation. Then it also gave boost to other activities like they would need some food facilities also. So uh, this home food, in Marathi they call it khanawat. So that kind of food facilities also were being required by the students. So those activities also started. So economic activity can get generated because of one larger development. So that's an example of the principle of progression. Uh, uh, the way we have acceleration and deceleration, similarly we have progression and regression also. So regression is the reverse of progression. The price of a property decreases with the reduced perceived value of the location where set in. It's believed and observed that larger and more expensive dwelling units will lose value if it is located near smaller, low-priced dwellings. And Mumbai, we have some of the developments which are, let's say, a place like Malabar Hill or Nepean Sea Road. Uh, those are the places where you don't have you don't have lower income groups. Whereas if you see Worli uh, or Mahalakshmi area, some of the buildings are quite nice. They're very well designed, constructed. Projects are also good in themselves, but the surrounding locality may not be that good. So, in such case, uh, they may not command a price that, or a value that they should be commanding. Now, with redevelopment taking place over a period of time, the things can change also. Principle of conformity. The principle of conformity said that conformity or consistency to land use objectives contributes to economic stability. Uh, specific, no, something again has got mixed up. Same style as the other properties in that same area ensure that values go up. Works in commercial areas too. The stores in an area should appeal to the same types of people in order to be successful. For instance, this is the reason there is a food court in the mall. Uh, since we have somebody here from Mumbai, when the development control regulations for 1991 were published, they took into consideration the shifting of non-conforming uses to the peripheral areas. So, let's say you have a residential locality, you can't just have a polluting use within that within the residential locality. So, if you have a bakery which is giving a lot of smoke, uh, it would cause nuisance to the residents of that area. So it's a non-conforming use. Whereas if you have a residential area which is a peaceful area, then you know, uh, with some supporting convenience shopping, then it helps. For the same reason, when we have the commercial developments like malls, the concept of malls when it came up, we have the shopping activity along with the recreational activity and the uh, food plaza also. Principle of consistency. The principle of consistency affirms that when the developed land is in the state of transition to another HAPU, that is highest and best use, it cannot be appraised with one use allocated to the land and another to the building or other improvements. The use of all real property components during valuation must remain consistent with each other. At times, this can be tricky also. I had come across a valuation report by somebody. Um uh, this is almost some 6 7 years back. We were required to do valuation of industrial plot in uh, TTC industrial area, and as per our computations, based on the data that we had collected, the value of the property was somewhere around 6.25 lakh, 6.25 crores to 6.5 crores. Whereas the chartered accountant of the developers, the landowners, he had a valuation report of about 15 crores issued by another valuer for Bank of Maharashtra. Somehow, when I went through the report and the documents that were furnished to me, I noticed that there were some anomalies. One was the project was in a very initial stage. Uh, they had not even paid the premium for additional FSI. From one, if you want to get FSI of 2 for ITUs, premium is payable to MIDC and the government. So the premium was not paid, though the demand letter was issued by MIDC, and it also had a deadline by which the premium was payable. In spite of that, the premium was not paid. I had asked for the premium receipts for payment of premium, additional premium. They did not have the receipts for that premium, and the computations were done assuming that the premium is paid and the development is done. Now, when you are doing valuation of the property, you actually have to see that what is the status as on date and if the further steps have been taken or not. Another example I'll give you is we had done valuation of land, somewhere around Pen in Raigad district, and some parts of the land they had got converted into non-agricultural use for bungalow plots with FSI 0.1, and some part of the land was agricultural land only, and the land holding was about 150 acres. So they wanted us to value that property as a special township. Now, when you say it has to be, though the special township happened to be the highest and best user, but since there was no progress in that particular direction, like the conversion of the NA land or the agricultural land into a township project by obtaining the locational clearances or environmental clearances. Since those aspects were not there, we had to value the land on as is where is basis and not as the uh, highest and best use, because there was no development on that account. Whereas the developers, they had produced valuation reports by some other valuers and broking houses, wherein the valuation was huge. It was 5-6 times that of whatever was the estimated value that was computed by us. So there can be a lot of difference on these accounts. So if all the approvals on the land remains the same, but if the approvals are obtained, all the approvals are obtained, then it just remains a matter of execution of the approved drawings on the site. Then the value can be different. If it is at initial stage, if the project is at initial stage and the clearances are being obtained one by one, it would be a steady value addition for that property. So even if the land remains the same, depending upon the yield that or the total area that can be sold out of that land, uh, or the yield that the developer can get, and the revenue accordingly can be generated, it would be governed. It would govern the value of that property, because for township projects you have floating FSI, and the FSI was 1, whereas for the NA plots the FSI was just 0.1. So uh, if it is in the state of transition, so uh, we have to consider and we have to be consistent. There cannot be any self contradiction in the assumptions and computation that we are doing. Principle of increasing or decreasing returns. So more is not necessarily better. So uh, if the larger the risk, greater the reward, but it's not that every time it has to be rewarding. It can backfire also. Principle of supply and demand. Market forces are always at work. I had given you an example of the film industry. A person like Amitabh Bachchan working for decades together, and he may have worked with uh, his own wife also. He could have worked with. He could be working with his daughter-in-law also. So the shelf life or the time that the heroines have is much lesser. So the demand and supply principle holds good there also, not just the real estate. It's just for you to remember the basic principle of demand and supply, because that happens to be the basic principle of economics. Principle of surplus productivity. Net income after all expenses of ownership in the return of the land. So all the expenses and all that have to be deducted, and the yield or the areas that you can get for selling, that have to be considered. Value in use. I hope people are with me, or since we are online, I'm not able to get your reactions or responses.
Yeah, yes, sir, we are with you.
Sir, we are very well there.
Yeah, okay. Because there are advantages of these online meetings, and at the same time there are some disadvantages also, no?
Yeah, true.
If you're dozing in a classroom, you can be seen. If a person is sleeping in an online meeting, I am not able to see that. So I don't know if it's got saturated or.
No, no, sir. Your lecture is a very good. So we are concentrating fully on whatever you are saying.
Thank you, thank you. So value in use and value in exchange. The value in use is productive use of and productive use possible and established, and value in exchange, the elements of scarcity and transferability making object marketable. So you have the bullion also. You exchange gold, money, and at the same time it's a scarce commodity. Value in use is you are using the product, whereas investment in gold happens to be just an investment. You are not able to use that unless you make ornaments. Valuation methods and approaches. An approach is means to advance towards a destination. It's a concept. So method is the way of doing things or step by step movement. It's a procedure. So and single approach can if you're having just a single approach, it could be one way of thinking only. So it can yield different kinds of results by using different approaches and methods. So approaches to valuations. Cost or asset approach. It provides the value using input cost as an indicator while following the principle that a buyer will pay no more for an asset than the cost to construct an asset of equal utility. Then income or earning approach. It provides an indication of value by converting the future cash flows to a single current capital value. And market or comparison approach is that provides an indication of value by comparing the subject asset with identical or similar assets for which price information is available. Now, out of these three aspects, these three approaches, the market or comparison method would be the most dependable and reliable and safe. Uh, Whereas it may not always be possible to adapt the market approach, especially when we don't have or there is a lack of data. So for market comparison or market approach, or you have residential buildings, residential flats that are being sold more frequently. So we get the sale instances for these. We can get better market information about these. But when it comes to say other assets like the industrial units or educational institutions or the hotel buildings, hotel projects, then we have to consider the other approaches also. Generally, for the industrial units, the cost approach is adopted. Again, it happens to be a combination of market approach as well as the cost approach. For the land, in the cost approach, again we estimate the value of the land by a method of comparison, and the value addition because of the improvements that are done, say the construction of the industrial unit there, or um, the other site development, or the infrastructure within, obtaining of power connection, water supply, firefighting. So whatever would be the cost that would be required to be incurred in getting the approvals and these developments at site, would compute the cost for the superstructure or the structure, and the land would be by the comparison of the land values in the locality. Then when we talk about let's say if it's a star category hotel, uh, then one could take into consideration the income or earning approach also. However, there would be limitations with this, because the developers, their chartered accountants or consultants, they tend to be over optimistic about the earnings, and they tend to be conservative about the expenses that are involved. So when we and it's you know if the expenses are less, or they are represented to be less, and if the income is represented to be higher, then definitely the net profit or the net income seems to be higher. But in the reality, that may not be the case. So one has to be very careful when we use the income approach for such kind of properties. And one more point that I would like to stress, which I have stated earlier, is like, if the value of the physical assets is much less than the income that can be generated by use of those assets, then the person tends to carry out the business there. The moment the physical assets start outweighing the income, if the income is less and the value of the physical asset is more, then people or the businessman, they tend to monetize that asset and shift their business activities elsewhere. So we need to take this also into consideration when we are doing this kind of valuation by income approach, especially for mortgage purpose. Income approach methods: rental method of valuation, there is the yield method for rental properties. Profit method, you have the earnings, you compute the earnings, and you capitalize the earnings. Then you have the DCF, that is the discounted cash flow technique. Investment method, for any asset with inconsistent cash flow. Even for the developers project, it could be worked out by using discounted cash flow. If the uh, developer were to spend some amount for obtaining approvals, rehabilitation of the existing tenants, he has to do that on a periodical basis starting from day one, whereas his incomes would start a few months or few years after project is visibly seen by the prospective buyers. So the value of a rupee, they say a bird in hand is better than two in bush. So even if you could be getting two birds later, or maybe a higher value later, at times it could make sense in settling for a lesser value, but going for a hard cash deal. Hard cash meaning you get all your money in your account immediately, rather than deferred payments. So in case of discounted cash flow, the expenses and the income, they are discount future earnings are discounted, future expenses also could be discounted, and the expenses that are to be paid immediately, they would be at the rate that we are you know um, referring to on that date. That market approach, you have the belting theory of land valuation. By belting theory, if there is a large land holding, um, uh, let's say a part of it touches the main road, and it could stretch, say 500 meters or 1000 meters, or even 1.52 kilometers inside. So the rate that a willing buyer would be paying for the property would be higher for the land parcels that are closer to the main road, the access road. So you have the land divided into different belts. So it could be, say, first 100 meters, then next 100 meters, then next 200 meters, then 400 meters. So as you go inside, the rates per unit area will be discounted. Hypothetical plotting scheme method for land valuation. Now, if a developer were to develop the land, then in that case, the development control regulations are applicable. If the property is along the highway, then building control lines as prescribed by the National Highway Authority of India, NHAI, or PWD, they are applicable. It could be 30 meters for residential buildings within close to the uh, residential areas. If they are on the outskirts, it could be more. For commercial developments, it could be 50 meters or 75 meters, depending upon where the project is located. So, ideally, when we are talking about building theory, we need to take these aspects also into account. Now, when we talk about hypothetical plotting scheme, we will be required to estimate what could be the area. What we have to see what is the area of the property, total land area. Uh, if as the document area as per the documents and areas as per the site surveys they are tallying, or if there are any issues, the minimum of the two have to be taken into consideration. And depending upon the topography of the site, road areas have to be area under roads has to be estimated. So it again depends upon the local regulations. Earlier in Maharashtra, roads of 4.5 meters, that is roughly 15 feet wide roads, also were acceptable for layouts, depending upon the length of the road. It was 4.5 meters, 6 meters, 9 meters, 12 meters. Now, with the revised development control regulations, the minimum width of the road for any layout is 9 meters if it is residential layout, and if it is there is going to be any commercial use, then you have to have minimum 12-meter road. So the area under roads would increase, so that has to be fairly estimated. Then again, if you have your site is a plain site, you can have grid iron pattern or any other kind of road layout. Whereas if you are having a contoured site, then you will have meandering roads, whereby the area under roads also would increase. So when we are talking about hypothetical plotting scheme method of land valuation, you have to uh, estimate the area under roads. Then you also have to have minimum open space, which is roughly 10% of the total land area. So if I say a 10-acre uh, land, so 40,000 square meters is the area of the land. 10% open space could make it 4,000 square meters. So that 4,000 is open space. I'm left with 36,000. Then about 12 to 15% of land could go under the roads. So if I calculate it at 15%, then 15 it comes to 6,000 square meters. So 4,000 plus 6,000, I'm left with 30,000 square meters. Then you have to have 5% amenity space. So again, 2,000 square meters would further be reduced. So I would be left with say roughly 28,000 square meters. Now, depending upon the demand in that locality, the plot sizes could be decided. So even if the developer is purchasing 40,000 square meters, he could actually be left with say anything around 27,000 square meters to 28,000 square meters. So he would be required to consider the cost of development. There is the cost of the road, asphalting, stormwater drains, then the power supply, water supply, and longer the roads, more would be the length of the services. So all these aspects have to be taken into account, and all those have to be deducted. You account for these in the expenses side, and then on the income side, you have to check as to what could be the rates for the developed lands in the locality, and then you can check the feasibility of that particular proposal. And if it is viable, then you can go ahead with or you can recommend accordingly. If the rates or the cost of the development is much higher and the yield is less, or the cost, that is the rates that you have to decide for uh, revenue generation is more than the surrounding market rate, then people may not buy those plots also. So that feasibility has definitely to be checked, and it's only then that we can carry out the valuation of property by hypothetical plotting scheme method. Front foot rule method of land valuation. Then you have sales comparison method, composite assets, adjustment grid model, price quality. पानी push कर पानी देना मला. Front foot rule method of land valuation. Generally, the properties in front foot method, you have the properties which are having uniform lot sizes or plot sizes, and then you have to check as to what can be the rates that a person can get for the ready premises which have frontage on the road, and accordingly you estimate the yield and what can be the expenses. So both these are worked out, and ultimate revenue generation minus the cost of development again is estimated. Then you have sales comparison method. It is for composite assets. It's the adjustment grade model. Then you have price quality regression technique, weightage score system, then development residue method, hedonic pricing model. When do you have the next? What time you have the next session? Hello.
Around 2:15.
So 2:15 after lunch, 1 hour of lunch. So already we are 15 minutes.
It's already 1:45. So how do we go about?
How much more is balanced? Sir?
A lot of it is there. Part 3 we have to still take.
So we can take a break for lunch and then again we can start in half an hour or for 45 minutes. Break.
What about the next session? Because if somebody else is already there, or do we have it later?
It's a case study by Mr.
So the coordinator has to now decide whether the next part. The coordinator has to now decide whether the next part.
It's a case. Next
I
is
hope whatever we have discussed, people are they have understood and.
yes, sir.
So, do we stop for the day today, and can we take it up later? Maybe I don't know if it is possible tomorrow.
No problem.
I think we will stop
Yes.
today.
First, share the presentation, sir. We can go ahead with that and we can study and see.
Okay, Vitik, I'll mail it to you.
It is Sandeep to take care of, to decide.
Yeah, yeah.
Sir,
It is Sandeep
what,
to
Yeah.
what coordinator is telling?
Uh-huh.
You should just manage accordingly what coordinator is coordinating.
Uh-huh.
I do not know because Sunday will be very hectic, I think. I do not know because Sunday will be very hectic, I think.
The coordinator has to intervene because so we have lectures till 6 o'clock. So he doesn't seem to be online.
Because Sandeep is there in the mid.
Yes, sir.
Coordinator, please.
Yes,
Sandeep
sir.
ji.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. Yes, sir.
So how do we go about, because you have next section is 2:50, now it's almost 145, 150. So there are quite a few other topics also to be covered. So can we keep it some other day? So there are quite a few other topics also to be covered. So can we keep it some other day?
I think Sandeep coordinator is not on the screen.
Hello. So voice is audible?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay.
I think now is available, sir. Coordinator Sandeep sir is now available.
10 to 6.
They are doing, yeah, they are just discussing. We should keep our.
सर मोस्टली कितना टाइम और लगेगा वैसे मैं नेक्स्ट फैकल्टी के
भी
साथ
कम से कम 1.5 घंटा तो लगेगा.
1.5 घंटा ओके
Oh no, then we have to go for lunch break.
Then the study we can take tomorrow, na? Coordinator sir,
यस सर
Deshpande sir complete this his session.
Sir,
Even after lunch also.
tomorrow session first session 10 to 1 then
Coordinator is responding.
second session 2 to 4:30 and third session 4:45 to 6:15 oh how can we manage
Can we keep it on Monday?
You
Monday
can keep on Monday. Monday we are ready to come, not an issue.
okay Monday no problem sir
Monday. Monday.
Monday timing sir
Morning time same, 10 to 1.
Yeah, okay.
Done. Monday done.
Okay.
Monday 10 to 1 11:30 na okay sir
Done. Monday done.
Okay. Okay.
It will better now so that we can go through all the curriculum.
I would like to get the feedback about whatever we have covered. If people are clear about whatever we have discussed, and if anything needs to be, any clarifications are required.
Nothing, sir. It's fine, sir. We'll meet up again.
Five minutes, चलो करते हैं.
Sir, very good, sir. Session was very good.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
संदीप सर
yes sir
आप जरा फीडबैक तो भेजो ना.
भेज दिया उन्होंने.
I am not finding
Monday,
Mahendra.
Monday 10 to 1.
okay
Mahendra ji is there in the chat, the feedback form. You can just press it. You'll get it.
let's check now so thank you to all for taking this session
Thank you Sandeep sir for sending link.
Please take your break and next session start by 2:30 I think okay
Yes, sir.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
2:30 okay thank you to all.
Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Responded, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ravinder,
Thank you,
sir.
sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Deshpande. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pandey. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.